Government Business Notice Number 1, standing in the name of Mrs Finocchiaro to present the Police Administration Amendment Police Public Safety Officers Bill 2025, Serial 39.
Chief Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I present a bill titled Police Administration Amendment Police Public Safety Officers Bill 2025, Serial 39, and table the explanatory statement. Madam Speaker, I move that the bill be read a first time. Madam Speaker, I present a bill entitled the Police Administration Amendment Police Public Safety Officers Bill 2025. This bill is the first tranche of changes to operationalise this government's commitment to a significant law and order reform that will target antisocial behaviour in public places, on our transport network and around public housing. This government is revolutionising frontline responses to antisocial behaviour by consolidating what are currently separate government frontline resources into one centralised workforce. This workforce will be a brand new rank of police officer called Police Public Safety Officers. The Police Public Safety Officer rank will consolidate resources currently spread across various agencies, namely frontline police auxiliaries, including police auxiliary liquor inspectors, public housing safety officers, transit safety officers, and private security resourcing to provide a centralised and highly visible response to issues impacting public safety in the Northern Territory. The need for police public safety officers is directed towards the future of policing. The community is best served by having both experienced and highly trained police focused on criminal investigations, complemented by another highly trained cohort of police engaged in policing support and antisocial behaviour responses. The establishment of police public safety officers within the Police Administration Act 1978 will improve efficiencies across our bus networks, public housing assets and public spaces. It will streamline operations and consolidate workflows, providing a safer and stronger Northern Territory, aligning with the government's pillars of reducing crime, rebuilding the economy and restoring our lifestyle. Police public safety officers will be equipped with the same knowledge and skills through standardised training programs. This will promote uniformity in performance and delivery while creating a flexible workforce that can be deployed across the community to combat antisocial behaviour and safety concerns in a targeted and structured response. This bill is only part one of the necessary reform. This bill will simply amend the Police Administration Act 1978 to legally establish police public safety officers as a rank of the Northern Territory Police Force. This bill is a necessary precondition for the determination of relevant industrial relations matters, namely determination of eligibility requirements for applicants and determination of the terms, conditions and remuneration of the police public safety officers. The establishment of the police public safety officers is a key reform to reducing crime and restoring the Territory lifestyle. The government is committed to progressing this initiative for the benefit of all Territorians in a timely fashion. It is imperative this bill be passed on urgency to allow the statutory preconditions for recruitment to occur. It is expected that the recruitment campaign for the police public safety officers will commence in October 2025. This bill will be enhanced by a second bill to be introduced in next month's sittings of the Legislative Assembly. The second bill will be a more substantive bill that will make amendments to the Housing Act 1982, Surveillance Devices Act 2007 and Public Transport Passenger Safety Act 2008, necessary to reflect existing powers being undertaken by police public safety officers. I'm pleased to commend this bill to honourable members and table a copy of the explanatory statement.
The question is that the bill be read a first time. Those of that opinion say aye. To the contrary, no. Aye. I think the ayes have it. The clerk.
A bill for an act to amend the Police Administration Act 1978.
Chief Minister.
Madam Speaker, I move that the bill be declared urgent. And Madam Speaker, in speaking to that necessity for urgency, as I've outlined in my contribution this morning on the first reading debate, this legislation is very simple in its form and does not contain any of the substantive components of what a police public safety officer will do, their pay and conditions and all of those other things. It's necessary to simply establish the rank. And as you see in the bill, It is very, very straightforward. Under the Police Administration Act, that is what creates our police force. It is the legal document that creates a police force here in the Northern Territory. And so currently we have a Aboriginal Community Police Officer, Police Auxiliary, and then what this will do is add Police Public Safety Officer into the legislation. Now that would just be effectively the empowering tool for our police force then to go and conduct that really important work now for the formal component of consultation with the Northern Territory Police Association, which then works through all of the conditions. And as I said in my first reading speech, Madam Speaker, that will then allow for the resolution of all of those terms and conditions once that formal consultation commences, which cannot commence without this happening first. So we have to create the position first, then the formal consultation around all of that industrial relations and terms and conditions happens. Once that is finalised, we can then go out to recruitment for the position so that we can say to people, well, this is what you'll be paid and this is what you'll be able to do and all of those things that you would expect. We cannot undertake a recruitment campaign until we've got all of the details around the actual job itself. So you can see it's a very clear process. We've got to, 1, create the position, 2, undertake the formal consultation and land on those details. Then we can open up recruitment. We can get our first group through into the college and into their training and graduate them. And of course, we have a time frame in which we'd like that to happen. It would be fantastic to see our first lot of recruits this year and to start that recruitment in October. So time is of the essence. We don't want to delay what will be a really important piece of reform for the Territory. And we've already done extensive change management, of course, with our public housing safety officers and our transit safety officers. Our police did an excellent session a couple of weeks ago now for everyone to get more information about what that might look like going forward. And so that work has to continue in the background to support them through this transitional phase. But what we know is that we have had a significant number of people expressing interest from both, within government and external, looking to move into this new role. And we know that this new role is a significant change to our policing here in the Northern Territory. It will free up our constables to be able to go and do those crime investigations, responding to 000 calls. It will allow them the opportunity to be doing that work whilst we have a separate stream of police doing that public-facing important work. And while our transit officers and our housing officers have been doing a great job, they, by their very nature, are very limited in what they can do. And so by bringing this coordinated approach in, we're going to have a far stronger response. And so we were able to brief members of the opposition and independents yesterday who sought a briefing as I said, it's a very straightforward piece of legislation. It's just that precondition to be able to do that next really important tranche of work. And we look forward to passing it today so that next week we can sit down and commence that important next steps and move towards that time frame so that in the first half of next year, we're graduating our first tranche of police public safety officers. And again, this is not a reinvention of the wheel. Other jurisdictions have PPSOs, and we know it's going to make a huge impact in frontline policing and community safety for Territorians.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And before I contribute to the motion that has been brought before the House by the Chief Minister, I do want to just give a big shout out to the Sanderson Middle School students who are here. One of my former colleagues or peers from school as well. I'm a Sanderson Middle School, very proud. So I was in the high school days though before we changed that system. It's going back to high school days. But big shout out to all the mob at Sanderson. That was my old high school. Madam Speaker, the Chief Minister has continued to show her lack of leadership when it comes to getting her house in order and showing Territorians that the CLP is fit for governing. We see time and time again in just 12 months, you can either say 12 short months or 12 long months, Madam Speaker, depending on how you view it, we have seen the lack of leadership, the lack of organisation and the lack of respect by the Chief Minister and by the CLP team, who do not care for any rules, who do not think, Madam Speaker, that the rules apply to them when it comes to making good law for the Northern Territory, when it comes to the very processes of the Westminster system, years and years and years before any of us were in this place, Madam Speaker, that have been established over time around the processes to have governments that are fit and proper. Well, that's debatable now for the Northern Territory, unfortunately. But processes, Madam Speaker, to show that there is a good way of making law for the Northern Territory. And time again, the Chief Minister and her CLP ministers have shown disrespect to this place, to these processes, and to the very Territorians that we serve in this House. 38 pieces of legislation, Madam Speaker, have been brought through the House. Only 8 of these pieces of legislation have been sent to a legislative scrutiny committee. The big song and dance and, oh look, CLP has brought back scrutiny to the Parliament scrutiny committee now exists. Only 8 of 38 pieces of legislation in the Northern Territory Legislative Assembly have even had a whiff of scrutiny because the CLP is going back to their DNA, Madam Speaker. They're not respecting Territorians who want to have a say on the very laws that govern the Northern Territory, the very laws that we all have to abide by in this House and outside of the House, from the Tiwi Islands to the desert, from the east to the west, Madam Speaker. Every single law in the Northern Territory that is made in this place deserves the respect that Territorians know that we, as parliamentarians, are doing our job, Madam Speaker. The leader of the government, Leah Finocchiaro, the Chief Minister, is not doing her job. Crowed about this for 8 years in opposition, Madam Speaker, and I think in the very first sittings of government, the CLP completely threw process and care of scrutiny completely out the window. Time and time again, Madam Speaker, of the 38 pieces of legislation, only eight have been to Legislative Scrutiny Committee. But 8 have been on urgency, including the one today, Madam Speaker. So 7 plus today, 1 makes 8. 8 urgent pieces of legislation because the government cannot get their house in order when it comes to creating strong, robust, carefully considered, dare I say, evidence-based law for Territorians. The very job. Why do we get elected, Madam Speaker? To be a good local member. What is our job as a member of Parliament? Is to make laws for the Northern Territory in the Parliament House. And today we are not even afforded the respect to do our jobs in the opposition and the crossbench. We are not even afforded the ability of, a last-minute invite for a briefing on, we're not sure if it's going to be urgent or not. We didn't even know this was going to be on urgency, Madam Speaker, until about 6:30 p.m. last night. I didn't get a call from the Chief Minister. Thankfully, her police advisor is a good man and did his job. Not even a call, message, text, email from the Chief Minister or the Leader of Government Business to say, hey, by the way, we're doing this because it's really important because of X, Y, Z. Not even afforded the respect to do our jobs properly, Madam Speaker. And a big part of this, and forgive me for being quite concerned and very suspicious, that we do not think that this legislation is going to come back in October like the government said it would. So we do not support urgency, Madam Speaker.
Please take your seat, Opposition Leader. What's your point of order, Deputy Chief Minister?
Standing up to speak.
Sorry? Oh, you're standing up to speak.
Time's expired.
The time's expired.
I am keen and eager.
Caught me out.
I'm
Deputy Chief Minister, please.
Keen and eager
you
to
have the call.
respond to the nonsense that we just heard from the lead opposition, talking about lack of leadership. This is true leadership, Madam Speaker. This is about making rules and laws best for the Territory, doing it when it needs to be done,
Opposition
doing
Leader.
it to make sure that the Territory is a safer place. Because we know, Madam Speaker, under the previous Labor government, the Territory went to rack and ruin. It went downhill very quickly, and perhaps, Madam Speaker, that's one of the reasons why I stood, because I felt that the Territory lifestyle and the Territory safety had been eroded by the previous Labor government. So that's probably why I'm here today, Madam Speaker. She went on saying, the rules don't apply. Madam Speaker, This is the rules. We are following standing orders. We're not changing the standing orders. We are simply following the rules and how they're set out in the rule book of the Parliament. So we are following the rules to a T to make sure that we do what we're elected to do, which is keep the community safe. Keep the community safe, which is something the others failed to do, Madam Speaker.
Can you just pause, Deputy Chief Minister? Opposition Leader, you're on a warning. Please continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And then she mentioned the Scrutiny Committee, the committee that she scrapped, the committee that they scrapped when she was a minister in this government. So she's got no credibility to talk about the Scrutiny Committee because they cut it completely. Yeah. There was no chance, Madam Speaker, to say anything to the Scrutiny Committee because that previous Labor government cut that committee, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, so when she talks about here and talking about integrity, she needs to look in the mirror because there would be no reflection whatsoever if she did that, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, now I want to talk about this matter is urgent, Madam Speaker. This is about making sure that we protect the community. We make sure that community safety is #1 priority, and we need to be able to get this legislation in urgency to allow those negotiations and that consultation to begin. Madam Speaker, I know that the previous government they didn't consult and they go over and say that we're not consulting. This is the first step to allow us to consult with the relevant stakeholders to get this legislation, which is not about how this operates and the functions of these roles. This is simply about creating the role so we can go away and we can negotiate. We can go away, we can consult how this is going to work, the terms and conditions, to make sure that we get it right. Madam Speaker, we know that the previous Labor government completely stuffed it up when it came to community safety in their 19 years of leading the government here in the Northern Territory, and crime went out of control. The economy sank to the lowest thing possible, and Madam Speaker, people were literally driving all the way out to God's Country in Howard Springs to go shopping because Casuarina was too dangerous to live. So imagine, Madam Speaker, the land of opportunity. Imagine, Madam Speaker, if we had these community safety officers back then where we could actually control the community and make it safe to go shopping. Literally safe to go shopping, Madam Speaker, instead of having to drive 30-odd kilometres out to God's Country to be able to go and buy you a loaf of bread, Madam Speaker. So this is really, Madam Speaker, about making sure that we get things right, and that's why it's on urgency, because this really is urgent. We want to start consultation, we want to start negotiating, we want to start setting up the terms, how these positions are going to work, so we can keep the community safe, Madam Speaker. We were elected to do that clearly, Madam Speaker. And she spoke about 38 pieces of legislation and not consulting and rushing them through. Madam Speaker, we took our policies to the election. We had a clear win, Madam Speaker, so we consulted with not just 1 or 2 people, we consulted with every Territorian. They voted, and they put 17 people here on this side of the government, Madam Speaker. So when you talk about lack of consultation, you cannot get better consultation. These 38 pieces of legislation are through our plan. I know the member for Cromer who speaks about our plan quite regularly. They are putting our plan in place. The leader, Leah Finocchiaro, who is showing leadership here, is getting that. We promised to do it, and we're doing it. We have promised to do it. And they don't like it, and that's probably why they're over there, Madam Speaker. But let me tell you, we're all out and about in the community, and the positive feedback we're getting from being safe in the community, picking up the economy, businesses turning around, is showing that the leadership that Leah Finocchiaro is showing this government is working. It's absolutely working, and we're here to make the community safe, Madam Speaker, and that's why this legislation is so urgent.
Member for Guadja.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I think what we're seeing here today is when we're talking about the police public safety officers, we're actually seeing a government who doesn't have a plan. They talk about a plan, but let's be clear. They announced this on the 19th of June. We are currently in September. They have had months and months to prepare for this, to get ready. They didn't talk about this at the start of the week when they put all their social media tiles up and said what they were doing in this parliament. No mention of this bill on urgency. They are doing this because the Attorney-General is so incompetent she could not deliver the anti-discrimination bill to this parliament, and they are scrambling for things to do. They were going to have a whole day in this parliament where they had not a single bill before the Assembly. So the Chief Minister ran back and yelled and screamed at people and said, we need to have something ready for Parliament,
order,
we
please.
need to do something. I heard from members in the police force last night who said they were absolutely blindsided that the government were doing this today on urgency because they had no idea what was going on. That's directly from police. Police saying we had no idea that this is what the government was doing. So when we talk about this, it is important to acknowledge, I absolutely acknowledge that there will be things that need to be done on urgency, as there have been traditionally for all parliaments. But the government very sneakily did not even take the opportunity to talk about it. If you knew that this had to be done, you could have said to the opposition and the independents, hey, we're going to do this on urgency at the start of the week. But you waited until 6:30 last night. Even members of the government, when they were asked what's going on, said, we haven't decided, yes, if it's going to be on urgency or not. The Chief's still thinking about it. That's what was going on last night when we saw these members all scurrying around like headless chooks because they had no idea what was going on, Madam Speaker. And it's bad for the Parliament when the opposition and crossbench don't have an opportunity to look at it. Whether it's big or small legislative changes, they need to understand people need an opportunity to look at it. They need an opportunity to go back and talk to their communities. Yes, this might be, as the Chief Minister is saying today, a small thing. It might very well be. But when we haven't even seen the bill until this morning, we don't know whether that is the case. We don't know whether the Chief Minister is lying or not because we haven't even had a chance to see the bill until this morning, Madam Speaker. And this is something that is worrying people. Territorians are asking questions. Will this Parliament get to come back and have a debate around whether or not transit safety officers and public housing safety officers will be carrying guns or not? Or was that going to be done by regulation? They're questions that people in our community want to know. And today we're not even able to tell them until this morning what's in the bill because we haven't even seen the bill. That is not good lawmaking, Madam Speaker. That is not good parliamentary process, Madam Speaker. So I absolutely look forward to being able to hear more from the government about these changes. And yes, absolutely acknowledge that there are industrial negotiations that take place. But the government have already said that these police public safety officers would not even be deployed until 2026. So, Madam Speaker, there is time to go through this process. We should not be rushing these things on urgency because if the government knew that there had to be industrial negotiations with the hard-working Northern Territory Police Association, the police force, all of those matters, then they've had time since June when they made this announcement to do that work, to have those negotiations, and we could be debating something here that's been given ample notice and opportunity for people to understand and hear, Madam Speaker. So, look, we are worried, we are concerned. We ask the government, stop bringing things on urgency that don't need to be. 8 pieces of legislation, including this one today, have been done on urgency, Madam Speaker, and they've not been referred to scrutiny committees. They haven't been given the opportunity. And let's be clear, today we are debating this as a direct result of the failure of the incompetent Attorney-General who could not bring an anti-discrimination bill to this Parliament because she did not consult properly. She shut Territorians out and they are scrambling for legislation. I dare say we'll see something in October on urgency because the parliamentary schedule is looking pretty empty too in October. But that's what you get under this government. They don't have a clear plan and they don't have a clear legislative agenda. You ask every cabinet minister, they can't tell you what's on the agenda.
Member for Namatjira, Treasurer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I rise to speak to the passing of this bill and the urgency. And I don't really think those on the other side of the chamber actually understand what we're here doing this morning because I've listened to the input from those opposite. We're here dealing with a specific administrative matter that needs to take place to create a position so that we can do the police public safety officers. Now, there is an administrative task that needs to happen so that the positions can be created. Now, the thing is, Madam Speaker, if we delay that, then we, in effect, delay the appointment and putting those people on the ground where they're needed. And we need those people on the ground, Madam Speaker, because police public safety officers are about improving effectiveness of our Northern Territory Police, improving their response capability, and then also the career paths for housing and transit safety officers who will transition across, but other people looking to move into the police force. And what this does, Madam Speaker, the whole bill, which is not what we're debating today, we're only debating the actual administrative part of creating the position so that the actual consultation work can take place. But what the actual larger part of the bill does is it creates flexibility and efficiencies for our police force. But we need to create the statutory preconditions for that employment, and that's what we're here doing today. It's a very simple piece, Madam Speaker, and the opposition are trying to conflate something that is completely different to what we're trying to do today. We need to establish the rank under the Police Administration Act, and we need to do that sooner rather than later, because by then creating the position, then that all-important work can take place. Now, through my department, there's been numerous discussions with the public transport safety officers about what their roles will be and what their pay and conditions will be. And that's been very difficult, Madam Speaker, because without actually creating the position, you can't determine what the pay and conditions are. So we have a number of people within my agency who want to transfer across, but they need to know what their pay and conditions will be. This piece of legislation that we're bringing on urgency today allows that discussion to take place and not delay it. Otherwise, we'll delay putting these people on the ground for months and months and months, and that's to the detriment of Territorians. Because I said in the media yesterday, I was asked about legislation and what goes through the scrutiny committee and what we bring into this House. I said, we will bring matters on urgency and we will pass them on urgency when they are of benefit for the safety of Territorians. When we need to provide for the safety and security of Territorians, I make no apologies for bringing acts on urgency into this parliament and passing them where we can provide that safety for Territorians. And that's what this is about, Madam Speaker. This is about dealing with crime and antisocial behaviour and dealing with it at a lower level so that we free our police up to do their all-important work and hopefully be proactive and start to reduce crime. That's what this is about, Madam Speaker. And I listened to the Leader of the Opposition talk about disrespect. I think the Leader of the Opposition needs to look in her own backyard and look at Labor's track record on how you respected Territorians. I think Territorians had their say on what they thought about how Labor respected them just 12 months ago. And the member for Guadja spoke about no plan. Well, I don't think that's quite correct. We've been very, very clear with our plan, particularly on the police public safety officers. We've been very, very clear about that plan and the work that we're doing to bring these people online. And this is a piece of work to make that happen. And we're doing it on urgency because we don't want to delay it. We know the importance of bringing these police public safety officers online quickly. They have to go through training, we have to advertise the positions, and now we are doing this small piece of administrative work to create the position so the consultation can actually happen so that these people know that when they're applying for these jobs, what their terms and conditions are going to be. But if Labor had their way, we wouldn't be passing this today. We'd be waiting months and months and months, and of course that would delay the implementation of those police public safety officers for months and months and months, and that would be to the detriment of the safety and security of Territorians going about their everyday lives. We want to be able to do what we need to do it safely, and this helps do that, Madam Speaker.
Member for Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm deeply concerned by the way this government is using urgency powers over and over again. Urgency powers, I'm new to this parliament, everyone knows that, so I'm learning what I can and I'm studying what I can about the way the Westminster system is meant to work. So I did a bit of research on how urgency powers are actually meant to be used. And I've got a whole series of quotes, but I'll just quote from Melbourne Law School here. Urgent powers are used to pass laws quickly in exceptional circumstances such as natural disasters, war or serious public health crises, where ordinary legislative processes are too slow to respond to immediate threats to public safety or the state's integrity. That is not what we are seeing here. That is not what we have seen through the 8 pieces of legislation that this government has pushed through on urgency. That's a misuse of the democratic process, and it makes our job here completely meaningless. It makes a mockery of having people elected by their constituents to contribute to the democratic process. We've seen this law, it came into our inbox, this bill, 10 minutes ago. No time to actually look at it, no time to understand what it means. We're being told, we had a briefing at 9 o'clock last night. No time to actually consult with the people in our community about what this might mean. Being told, don't worry, there's nothing to see here. Forgive me, CLP, it's very difficult to trust that, looking at what's happened over the last year. I don't understand the rationale that consultation can only begin once this law has passed. That doesn't seem to have happened in anything else, in any other laws that this government has brought through. I'm unclear about whether or not passing this law. I've heard the Chief Minister say that this is the first tranche, there will be more legislation coming. I'm unclear about what powers this law is actually going to be giving to these new PPPOs, none. So my question is whether or not we will be coming back to Parliament to actually articulate those laws and those changes, or is that something that will be done through regulation? Are we making that decision now today or not? I don't know. I haven't got that information. I asked that last night in my briefing. I didn't get the answer.
Silence, please.
This government has also reintroduced the scrutiny committee. I have applauded that. But to refer a matter like the container deposit legislation to the scrutiny committee when no bills that are about actual human rights that have come before this parliament have been referred to the scrutiny committee is shameful. That is not the purpose of the scrutiny committee. The scrutiny committee is there for this government to be properly informed about what the implications might be of the laws that they are bringing to this chamber and will be affecting people across the Northern Territory in relation to their human rights. To refer a piece of legislation that's about bottle caps to that committee when you don't refer the anti-discrimination legislation, you don't refer any of the justice laws to that committee, you know, for sacred sites, any of the bills that this government brought in that have fundamental impact on people's human rights is a misuse of parliamentary resources. Madam Speaker, I strongly oppose this bill being brought through on urgency. I feel like it's preventing me from doing my job here in this chamber, representing my constituents. Thank you.
Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I rise to support this matter coming on urgently, as the Chief Minister has outlined and how many of my colleagues have spoken about this morning as well. And, Madam Speaker, this is of the utmost urgency because we went to an election saying that we needed to reduce crime, and Territorians spoke overwhelmingly that they too saw reducing crime as the #1 priority. And guess who are the people on the front line who help reduce crime and deal with the baddies out there on our streets? It's our police. And our police are the ones who asked for this to go through today on urgency so that they could go through the processes to start looking at the college, what needs to happen, the industrial conversations that have to go on, how it's going to all work. This is the process that allows that to happen. If we delay this any further, if we wait until October, that means those graduations have already kicked off and started, and we actually push everything back for our police by another 6 months. So it is absolutely urgent, and it is. I'm going to respond to the Scrutiny Committee as well. The things that we're saying to the Scrutiny Committee are the things that we haven't ventilated in the community for the previous 12 months of campaigning an election. All of the things that we have brought forward on urgency have been about our election commitments, and that is more consultation than ever before. It's just common sense at how that works. And so we will continue to come in here representing Territorians by putting forward the plan that we said we would do, by implementing legislation. And I note the Leader of the Opposition talked about the 38 pieces of legislation that we've brought into this parliament in just 1 year. I mean, that's extraordinary. How much did Labor put forward in 4 years? Probably not that much. They were really slow, really slow. And so I actually am really proud of the 38 pieces of legislation that we've brought in this House in 12 months, because what that demonstrates, if they want to talk about process, is that we're actually delivering on the promises that we gave Territorians. It's Territorians that wanted us to deliver, and we are doing absolutely that. And the fact that the former Attorney General, member for Gwaja, comes in here and tries to throw stones at us, Territorians know that he was the worst Attorney General that Territorians have ever experienced. He single-handedly watched over and let a crime crisis go through the Northern Territory, not even caring one bit about victims, allowing the place to go to rack and ruin over 8 long years. And I just think that is an absolute disgrace. That's why he's no longer the Attorney General, and that's why the Labor government are no longer. And I don't know how long it will be before they find themselves again and work out who they actually represent, because it's certainly not all Territorians. They seem to be so blindly coming into this chamber and throwing pot shots all the time, accusing us of misrepresenting Territorians. We're delivering on what we said we were going to do. It's that simple. And those 38 pieces of legislation, I mean, we had 5 bills in 3 days. That's an enormous agenda to get through. So we're really proud as a CLP government of that work. They did support all of them. Thank you, Member for Goyder. So, Madam Speaker, this allows that one small piece of change in the Police Administration Act to ensure that we have the role titled, so that then police can go and do the really important work that they have to do to continue the process, continue the negotiations, to continue industrial relations, terms and conditions, the roles, the powers, all of those sorts of things. The Chief Minister did say there will be more coming back next month to explore all of those other things, and obviously we'll be talking about that in the media, like we do everything else, and leading up to that point. And I just want to pick up on the fact that the opposition is really upset that they had to work past 6:30 p.m. last night. Well, guess what? We work day and night, and we will continue to work day and night bringing legislation into this parliament to make a better life for Territorians, because that's what they asked for and that is what they deserve.
Are there any more speakers? Member for Daly.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And again, this isn't about the bill itself. It's about the process in this parliament with what we go through. There were members in this chamber, including myself, the member for Wanguri, the member for Fong Lim, who late last year went down to Melbourne to represent this chamber, to go down to the Legal and Constitutional Affairs Committee conference to actually look at good and proper process. And I can tell you right now, all those other jurisdictions around the country and New Zealand who were there representing their jurisdictions would be shaking their head at what's going on here today. As the member for Johnson outlined, pieces of legislation put on urgency should only be for emergencies. This is definitely not an emergency. As we know, the government have known this since June. Was it the 19th of June, I believe? The 19th of June, you've known about this. So to come in here and pretend that, oh, all of a sudden it's urgent is nothing but a lie. Because we have seen, I have not seen, from any member from the CLP government putting this out here in the public that this legislation was going to be put forward this week. Not one single piece of information from any member from the CLP government to let Territorians know, to let the opposition know, to let the crossbench know that this piece of legislation was going to come forward. But we know why this piece of legislation has come forward, because it was the Attorney-General herself who's been completely incompetent as the Attorney-General, because she was not able to bring forward her anti-discrimination bill, because apparently she needed further scrutiny, further consultation, yet she hasn't even used her own scrutiny committee to put that piece of legislation through that scrutiny committee to get that feedback and consultation through the various groups. So if you want to come here and sling mud about our Attorney-General apparently being the worst Attorney-General in the history, well, I don't believe that. I think you're the worst Attorney-General that we've seen, because you couldn't even bring in your piece of legislation, the Anti-Discrimination Act, which we know has been going on for some time. You couldn't put it through any bit of scrutiny or a scrutiny committee. So it is you that is the worst Attorney-General in the history of the Northern Territory. And I'm proud. I'm proud of the member for Gwadja and the legislative reform that he put through. No, he didn't ruin the Territory. He put good, solid social policy through this parliament. And look, they're all upset. They're all upset because the Attorney-General could not even get her anti-discrimination bill before us. That's what's shameful here. That's what's incompetent here, is the Attorney-General. So, Madam Speaker, as I was mentioning earlier, this is not good, proper legislation. We did work past 6:30 tonight. The issue we have is you told us at 6:30 last night that there was a briefing and this was going to come forward at 6:30 yesterday.
Just pause, please. We'll have some order while the member for Daly is speaking. Continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, as I said, it was at 6:30 yesterday that we got told that this 6:30 p.m. yesterday in the evening that we got told that this was going to be coming through today. With no detail, hardly any questions answered, and yet you still can't even answer some of the questions that the Leader of the Opposition, the member for Gwadja, the member for Johnson got up. So I would hope that someone would get up next to answer some of those questions, because there are some administrative details that we need to know, whether we support it or not. We can't trust you. We don't trust you with pieces of legislation. You can't be trusted. Our role as opposition is to scrutinise pieces of legislation, is to go through the detail and ask those important questions on behalf of Territorians. So this is an admission from the CLP government. They have completely failed Territorians.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And just responding to this debate on urgency, in fact, it's interesting that we're now 45 minutes into this debate, and we constantly hear that they haven't had an opportunity to read this bill, but wasting 45 minutes talking about urgency. They had the briefing at 6:30 last night. They could have read. Not only did they get the briefing, Madam Speaker,
Silence.
It's been explained, I don't know how many times over and over again. The clauses that are changing today is including the position of a police public safety officer. So to say that they don't understand or they haven't had enough time, they've just wasted 45 minutes talking about this, and that's how hard it is. But it was back on the 18th of June, Madam Speaker, and it was interesting to hear from the member for Johnson saying that she didn't understand what this was all about, because on the 18th of June we made it very clear that this was aimed at reducing crime and restoring the Territory lifestyle. We made it very clear back on the 18th of June that the position of the Police Public Safety Officer stream would be created to better deploy frontline resources here in the Northern Territory. So to come in here today and suggest that there's very little information about this position is not only misleading, it just goes to show that they're either not listening to what's going on here in Parliament, because this has been spoken about not only here in Parliament, but it's been spoken about in the media for months. So back on the 18th of June, go back and have a look what the intention was of this legislation, because it seems to me that nobody over on that side wants to hear
or listen. And I can understand why, after 8 years of failure by the Labor government when it came to making those important changes that would actually reduce crime here in the Territory. We know, listening to the young member for Daly and the member for Gwajar who failed to even put in any safe liquor laws after the cessation of Stronger Futures. We know how much they failed when it came to reducing crime. We're getting ahead, we're moving ahead, Madam Speaker. We were elected last year to reduce crime, rebuild the economy and restore Territory lifestyle. So that's what we're getting on with. That's what this legislation is all about. We made it very clear, the Chief Minister has made it very clear that this is all about creating a position of the police public safety officer. There's nothing more, there's nothing less. What it will do is create the position to allow the, firstly to include it in the legislation and then to commence the important consultation with the Police Association to determine the conditions of service of that particular position. So once that goes into the legislation, we have strong, solid grounds to commence that negotiation. But moving forward, getting those police public safety officers in place will provide a consolidated response to some of the antisocial behaviour that we're seeing in public housing at the moment, bringing the transit officers into that fold, but also some of those police auxiliary positions. So what this will create is an opportunity to commence that negotiation and get on with the job of reducing crime here in the Northern Territory. So that's what it's all about. We've heard about scrutiny. We know that the former Labor government didn't have a scrutiny committee, and to hear all this debate about scrutiny, it's disingenuous for them to be standing up there talking about all of these things when they know after 8 years under that Labor government, not only was there no scrutiny, they didn't even have a scrutiny committee. So to come in here and try to paint this picture that the CLP is somehow doing things wrong, look, we're getting on with the job. This is urgent to get this get this position into the legislation so that we can move ahead and have those necessary industrial consultations with the Police Association. Everybody wants to see this position. We know that Labor is opposed to reducing crime. That's why they did nothing over the 8 years that they were in government. Absolutely nothing. They had the opportunity. We know that the Attorney-General failed to introduce legislation when...
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
Yes, point of order, Chief Minister.
Standing Order 31, imputations and improper motives. I have consistently heard the opposition leader and other members of the opposition calling out liar, using the word liar in their contribution. It is highly unparliamentary and unacceptable up until this point in our parliament. I can't remember in my 13 years ever hearing that word being used as flippantly and carelessly and improperly as I'm hearing it now. I seek your ruling on this, Madam Speaker, because quite frankly, in my view, it is unparliamentary at a minimum and it offends the standing orders in the extreme.
Chief Minister, you are right. To accuse members in this parliament of lying is unparliamentary, but there's always been a certain amount of latitude given to the context in which it's said. It is absolutely disorderly and unacceptable to call someone a liar, but to say someone is lying has often gone through to the keeper. Look, I agree with your sentiment. It is unparliamentary to make those accusations across the chamber. I haven't pulled it up because over the years it has been allowed to some degree, but I will not allow interjections of that kind. If you want to say that someone is lying, get up on your feet and execute that argument. And the process normally is to suspend standing orders and argue basically through a censure motion that someone has lied, and you can use a debate to do that. But the Chief Minister is right. it is unparliamentary. I haven't ruled it out because there has always been this grey area, to my mind. That has always been my perspective when it comes to that type of behaviour. But absolutely, it is unparliamentary, and I would urge people to desist in using that language. Or, as I said, if you've of the mind that someone is lying, take the bold step and debate it through the suspension of standing orders, through other mechanisms at your disposal. So from this point on, I will be calling it as unparliamentary. I think I've been reluctant to do so because it often means that the debate that's been carried out, like at present, is interrupted and distracted by that. But everyone is on notice from this point on. And if the Leader of Government Business would like to complete his speech.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And just in closing, after 8 years of Labor putting offenders first, we want to put victims first. We want to ensure that the unacceptable levels of antisocial behaviour are brought under control, and I urge that this legislation be passed today. Thank you.
Member for Arafura.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yeah, this is another example of the government just making things as they go along. You're basically just showing us this bill and then asking us to trust you. We need proper process. You know, I pick up on what the deputy said. He said we bring the bill to the House and we take it out for consultation. I think along those lines, that's a back to front process. You're meant to go out there and consult first. You know, I'm sort of gobsmacked by that. Nothing in that book, that CLP plan, said nothing about no consultation and no engagement outside and then start from the inside going out. That's so, I'm just gobsmacked by that. And I really don't, I am struggling to let my constituents know about all of this. You know, there's Aboriginal people living in housing complex and catch the bus every day. You know, we've got the member of Karama, we've got the 2 Palmerston boys. We've got a huge Aboriginal constituent, you know, like in our area. And we want to let them know, and we want to do our job properly to let them know. So I just ask for a bit more respect for us to start telling our people, you know, and letting them know that this is coming. No forewarning. Yesterday, 6:30, only the member for Arnhem went up for the briefing because the rest of us had to be down here. Why didn't we get the mention yesterday? And if it's so urgent, I'm the opposition whip. I would like to be let know, probably on Tuesday, and then let my team know so that we can debate it properly. Obviously, you know, because of another legislation not being pushed through during the week, they had to push this up. We understand that, but, you know, we need proper consultation. We need proper input. We need proper scrutiny on everything we do in this House as representatives. It is not what Territorians expect of a good government, you know, and it's not what they expect of us as well. As opposition, we want to tell our people what's coming. You know, I want to go out there and say, this is coming up in October. Do you want me to put an input in? I can't get that chance with this sort of process. So that is my input. Thank you.
Okay, member for Karama.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Look, I heard very clearly from the member for Daly that we haven't been out there consulting with people about this. And I also picked up from the member for Arafura, who also talked about consultation. Well, let me tell you, Madam Speaker, I put in the press release about police public safety officers model in planning in my July newsletter. I delivered that newsletter, hand-delivered it, across the whole electorate. They read it. They came back and gave me feedback. And let's just look at a couple of elements of what it said. It said, heading was Police Public Safety Officer Model and Planning. The Whanokī-Aro government is embarking on significant law and order reform to target antisocial behaviour in public places as part of our year of action, certainty and security. It also went on to say, aimed at reducing crime and restoring the Territory lifestyle, the Government and Northern Territory Police Force are developing a new Police Public Safety Officer stream to better deploy frontline resources across key public spaces. And it also went on to say it would cover transit officers, it would definitely cover public housing officers, which is really relevant to my electorate. And finally, and can I have leave to maybe just table that page too, please?
Is leave granted to the member? All those in favour say aye, to the contrary no. Leave is granted.
And so it went on, and it went through the description of all this. But let me tell you what the last paragraph said. A structured change management process will support affected staff and guide the transition. The first intake of police public safety officers is expected to commence training in December 2025 and officers operation in early 2026. That was the time frame we've told the community about. Now, let me tell you, I have had many people come up to me in my electorate and say, we need this, but Brian, we need it quicker. You're not doing it quick enough. They would like it this week. They probably want it last week if they could have the chance. But you do have to go through a process. They do have to go through a process. And this is just some enabling legislation to just start the process to get the descriptions finalised and the positions created so that then we can go on with getting the powers and all those sorted out and then getting the recruitment process going. You need to get this started. And I don't think my electorate want us to sit back and say, oh no, let's lay this on the table for another 30 days. Let's go to a scrutiny committee. They want it. They don't want to hold back on this. They know that this is what they want. And sure, we can debate the details when the further legislation comes through, that's fine. But they do want this happening. It's a change they've been demanding and they are very conscious. So I understand normal concerns around urgency, but I hear this bit about, 8 pieces of legislation. Do not forget that early legislation we brought in was in our plan, as the Deputy Chief Minister said. We said week 1 of Parliament and we did all the stuff about bail reform. We went to the election on that. We consulted with the whole of the Territory. They wanted us to deliver on what we said, and that's what we did. And likewise, this, I think, is really urgent for my electorate. They really do want it, and I commend the bill.
Honourable members, I draw your attention to more students from Sanderson Middle School in the gallery. Welcome to Parliament House on behalf of honourable members. Chief Minister, you don't have the right of reply.
Oh no, I'm just moving that the bill be read a second time. Is that the end of urgency?
No.
Oh, you're going to put the motion.
I'll put the question. The question is that the motion be agreed to. Sorry, I won't. The question before the House is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye, to the contrary no. I think the ayes have it. Chief Minister.
I move that the bill now be read a second time.
Thank you, Minister. I call on the next member to speak in the debate. Member for Drysdale.
Madam Speaker, the police public safety officers are something that is extremely welcomed in the community of Drysdale. In fact, it is something that can't come soon enough. Public disorder and antisocial behaviour has been a major issue throughout the electorate, particularly around buses and housing. And I'll speak to the bus network in Palmerston. It is unfortunately antisocial behaviour about 2 years ago hit such a point that most people would no longer use it. Seniors completely stopped using the bus network about 2 years ago. And this meant they're relying on family members to come and take them to doctor's appointments. They're not going out visiting friends, all because they do not feel safe hopping on the bus. And that's a real tragedy. It's quite a toll. It means our seniors aren't as connected. And I know too, speaking with especially the adult children of those seniors, they know that their mum or dad feels a burden on the family, and is not asking to travel as much as they would like. I took up an offer from Ralph Sinclair, a bus driver in my electorate. He's been a long-term Territory bus driver, and he's a great man. He's a very good advocate for his fellow bus drivers. And I took him up on the offer to take the Route 71 from the Palmerston Depot on a Friday night, and it was the last run. That was it was a horrendous experience, to put it bluntly. When I arrived at the bus depot, there were fights breaking out everywhere, security attempting to de-escalate, however severely limited by the powers they had. And whilst all this was going on, whilst there was drunken violence throughout the bus depot, I saw kids from my school at Grey Primary with one of the mums trying to go see a movie at Gateway. And they came up to me all happy, they were waving, you know, and my heart just kind of sunk in that moment that these children were being exposed to this degree of violence, drunkenness, and antisocial behaviour just to go and see a kids' movie on a Friday night. And so we can't let these, you know, we just had a discussion about urgency, which I won't go back to because we have discussed it, but I relay that it is urgent for the people in my electorate that we act on this. It is genuinely a matter of safety. It's a matter of how we honour our seniors and the kind of world we want to bring our children into. I also was at a recent event. I'd like to thank Sarah and Daniel Fay, a 16 and 14-year-old brother and sister who catch the bus to school. And they came up to me with their mum. I was doing an event in Gunn, and they wanted to know what I was doing about bus safety because they'd had a knife pulled on them that day at the Palmerston bus depot. Obviously quite rattled, and their mother is also a teacher. They're a great family. And so they brought their children down to ask me, what am I going to do to ensure their own safety to and from school? And so I spoke to them through a number of reforms, but I particularly focused on the police public safety officers, of which they were huge supporters. And so if we're going to listen to our young people, listen to Sarah and Daniel, who wanted this yesterday, because they want to go to and from school feeling safe and not have a knife pulled on them on their simple commute to school. It also will make a huge impact in housing. Housing is the single largest root cause of crime in the electorate of Drysdale. There is a huge facet of reasons, as we all know, that feed into it. But housing, by far, is, when we talk of root causes, it is a major root cause of crime. Allowing public safety officers to have real powers to intervene in antisocial behaviour and crime ongoing in a public housing premise will make a massive difference to the overwhelming amount of struggling community members. And I'll talk through some of them. Some of these members include neighbours such as Kristen Kent, Janet Leopoldeven, Charles Wright, Giles Smith, Daniela, Rosalind Maff, Quinton Otley, Katie Pritchard, David Drew. And whilst I just mentioned one neighbour, Katie Pritchard, to show why this government is acting with urgency and doing the measures we are, I regret to inform the House that Katie on Monday was sexually assaulted on her run, on Monday morning. I've spoken to Katie. I took a call just after we started business and spoke to Katie on the phone, where she was running through Grey. She's a woman about my age, a single woman. She's big into her fitness. And out the front of the Sin City Flats on Victoria Drive, a man came up and grabbed her in the most depraved and indecent way. She wished she had OC spray, but she was unable to get it yet. And so when I'm in this chamber, this is why I support the actions we take, the urgency in which we deliver it, because a woman like Katie should never have to endure such an attack. If we had greater law and order within those flats, public safety officers being able to control antisocial behaviour, manage tenancies that are doing the wrong thing, it could have been a preemptive measure to stop that attack. And so my heart truly goes out to Katie, and she's asked me to call her again today, which I will, and I got her permission to talk about her case because she wants people to know. She wants people to know what it's like being a woman by yourself and the crimes that are committed in our Northern Territory against vulnerable people. And so she doesn't want to be silent, and I commend Katie for that. And Katie, I'm going to do everything I can, including supporting this bill to make Drysdale that little bit safer and to hope that we have less victims moving ahead. It also goes to struggling tenants, and there are many struggling housing tenants who speak to me. Last week, before coming in the chamber, I had one senior from housing who was in my electorate office for about 3 hours crying. She did not feel safe to go back to her residence. We had the police come, we contacted housing. It is heartbreaking that a woman in her 80s who has lived in her property for 40 years, and she is an incredible woman with a huge heart. She grew up in community, came to Darwin in the 70s, and she's really proud of what she achieved in her life. She has a beautiful grandson at North Force now, and she's quite proud of her family and what they're doing. And for her not to feel safe enough to return home on Emery Avenue just breaks my heart. And so what am I to do in this position? Well, I'll support laws like this. I will support anything I can do so that she feels safer in her home. So for Nola Austral, Elma, Brian Shadford, Barry Young, Rihanna and her beautiful daughters, for Aaron Driver, Martina Parry, Dee Dee and Ian Gordon, all residents who are struggling with the antisocial behaviour going on in their housing residence. They know the police are busy, but Madam Speaker, we need to resource so that they get emergency help when they need it, so that we are doing things before the antisocial behaviour tips into a crime, and that is what these public safety officers will do. They will help tackle crime and antisocial behaviour on the buses and in public housing before it becomes an emergency, and this will free up our police to continue policing. I, for one, and I will be a very strong advocate that they have strong powers because I want to see them be able to truly make Drysdale safer. And so I'll be a very strong advocate for that. I speak to all my housing residents who reside at a number of areas, including 85 Emery Avenue, 29 Victoria Drive, Cornwallis Circuit, Wright Crescent, Emery Avenue and Essington Avenue, where I know a huge number of you feels unsafe in your public housing, and you put me here to make change. And so I do not flinch in pushing bills through. I am proud because I will not go back and tell them I slowed down any measure to keep them safer. They want this, they know it's coming, and Madam Speaker, I look forward to seeing our police public safety officers out in the community. I hope by moving this today, we can get the wheels in motion with the administration side, getting those negotiations sorted. I hope those negotiations make it a very attractive role for individuals that want to fulfill it. So I hope that we have a genuine uptake of individuals who want to step into the police public safety officer role, because I think it will be a position that you can make real meaningful change in our community, no matter where it is. But I know particularly for Palmerston, they can make a real difference, and it's a difference to people like those grade primary school kids who were going off to see a movie. You can make that group of children live a much more normal life, go see a movie with mum and the auntie on a Friday night, to our seniors so that you can catch the bus and see your friends at the local cafe, so that you can get to your doctor's appointment, so that you don't feel like a burden, because you are not a burden. And it is our job, we must honour our elderly. We have a responsibility to look after our elderly, and ensuring a safe bus network is part of it. And like I had said earlier, I have personally taken the time to see our bus network at its worst. And it is an absolute shame. I've travelled to some pretty crazy parts of the world, and I'd never seen a public transport so just a complete breakdown of behaviour. I'd not seen that anywhere in the world, Madam Speaker. And that's the reality we have, and that is why our government, some might say, you know, it's rushed, it's extreme, but that's the reality of the problems we are facing. And I will not apologise, because I'm here for the people of Drysdale, and I will ensure the people of Drysdale have the safest housing, the safest buses, and in doing that, will free up police to be more proactive in the community, get to more of the cases they are receiving every day. And I thank them for their hard work, and I sincerely look forward to welcoming the police public safety officers when they come into our community. And I ask for anyone that wants to make a difference in the Northern Territory's future to take up that role, and I look forward to the Minister's work in making that the most attractive role we can. Thank you.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I rise on this legislation, which obviously we heard is urgent, but apparently it's just an administrative change. So I'm not sure at what point, Madam Speaker, the CLP government members start to question their leader around the lack of organisation and structure when it comes to the regular parliamentary process. I understand, Madam Speaker, Leah Finocchiaro, as the Chief Minister of the CLP government, has been in the parliament longer than I have. 9 years, she's been in here a few more years than me. should be much more experienced, Madam Speaker, when it comes to parliamentary process. Often criticised the former Labor government around processes when she was in opposition, but poof, apparently processes don't mean anything to her now that she's in government, Madam Speaker. But also reminding CLP members of government that the teacher for your leader, Leah Finocchiaro, was the former CLP Chief Minister, Adam Giles. And look what happened to that government. They wrote a book, Madam Speaker, about how bad the CLP government was under the former CLP Chief Minister, Adam Giles. And guess what? Adam Giles was the teacher for Chief Minister Leah Finocchiaro. She was the only member of the 17 CLP members that now make up the Northern Territory government when he was the leader. So she has learnt from the worst, Madam Speaker. The Chief Minister, Leah Finocchiaro, has learnt from the worst about how to disregard community, how to disregard experts, how to disregard advocates, how to disregard lobbyists. Oh, unless they're lobbyists who you want to meet with and are probably friends with. So that's about the only community engagement that we are hearing that is cutting through to the CLP government, to the point where the Attorney-General of the Northern Territory, Marie-Claire Boothby, the member for Brennan, has stuffed one of the most important pieces of legislation that we were expected to debate this year of 2025 in the Northern Territory Legislative Assembly. Can't even get community consultation, expert consultation and advocacy right when it comes to the Anti-Discrimination Act of the Northern Territory. Made big promises, made big commitments for whatever reason to whoever, we don't know, because the lobbyist register is some little scrap of paper that they hidden away somewhere in the Chief Minister's desk, and apparently not everyone who's a lobbyist even needs to register on their lobbyist register, Madam Speaker. So we don't know any of that information, and I highly doubt that the CLP government is going to share that. Definitely not with us, but definitely not with the public, Madam Speaker, not with Territorians who they serve, who they've taken oath and affirmations to serve in this House, Madam Speaker. It is quite outstanding and not in the positive way, Madam Speaker. When we've heard the crowing from the CLP government about the dates, everyone should have known the police public safety officers were coming on board in June. Yeah, the CLP government should have known too. This is an administrative change. You're saying it's a simple change of inserting the PPSOs into 2 sections of the Act. We understand that. We're not stupid. We understand that simplicity. What we do not understand, Madam Speaker, is why and how and whose responsibility it was for the last 3 months to do that job, to get it ready, to make sure it was going to be available, to do the recruitment and everything else that comes with those technicalities of inserting that section into the Police Administration Act. Whose job was it, Madam Speaker? Well, I think it would be the Police Minister's job to do that and to know that and to get that information. Oh, wait. That's the Chief Minister, Leah Finocchiaro. It was her simple job to insert 4 words. And yet, here we are now on the last day of the September sittings, and we've seen, as the member for Johnston said in the urgency debate earlier, we've seen an abuse of power by the CLP government to do a seemingly simple task of making a few changes, inserting some words into the Police Administrative Act, the PAA, and they can't even do that in a timely fashion, an orderly fashion, under the normal processes of Parliament. This should have been a no-brainer for the CLP. They've known since the 19th of June in their public announcement, in their celebrated public announcement about the PPSOs. They forgot to do the work, Madam Speaker. They forgot to do the simple work. And we are very, very suspicious, Madam Speaker, because after the last sittings, after the July sittings, we came out of this place, the Youth Justice Act was debated on urgency, shoved down our throats with less than 24 hours for any type of process around the bill. We got an urgent briefing on the Monday of that sittings. the actual legislation was not introduced until the Wednesday of that sitting, so we did not even see the laws that we were going to be debating, scrutinising and, God forbid, supporting or not supporting. We did not get the opportunity to do our jobs as members of Parliament. And then the next day, less than 24 hours, we were to debate a very important bill. Not just a couple of words like what's happening now, but a very important bill around the future of youth justice in the Northern Territory. And then a week later, Madam Speaker, we hear that the changes to the regulations that govern the OC spray and the sales and the retails of OC spray was gazetted through regulation around the changes to the Public Weapons Act, or the Weapons Act of the Northern Territory, about public having a prohibited weapon sale and available. So not even a whisper of this change happening during the Parliament week. They like to celebrate everything for themselves. But when it comes to scrutiny, when it comes to answering simple questions, God forbid, complex questions and questions that deserve a proper response, the CLP government has shown in the 12 months of governing so far, they have learnt nothing from the past. Their leader, Leah Finocchiaro, the Chief Minister of the CLP government, has repeated some of the very, very costly mistakes of her former CLP leader, Adam Giles. She has learned nothing about what not to do and how not to govern. They wrote a book about it, Madam Speaker. The CLP government, last time they were in, there was a book written about how bad the CLP government was. So, Madam Speaker, all I can say is 12 months into this government, I look very much forward to reading the sequel to Crocs in the Cabinet, because this government here before us today, who are in charge and responsible of the Northern Territory, will be having a sequel about them. And I very much look forward to reading about all the personal characters that sit here in the chamber and all the horrible things that they've done so far and how bad they are leading the Territory down the drain right now, Madam Speaker. Get their house in order is what we're asking, Madam Speaker. If you cannot even get yourselves organised as a CLP government to change 4 words in a Police Administration Act, months and months of announcement, and you're doing it now on the last day of the sittings on urgency. What does it say about your Police Minister? What does it say about the Chief Minister, Leah Finocchiaro? She can't even do a simple task. How is she fit for governing the Northern Territory? Surely, Madam Speaker, at some point, one of the 17 members of government are going to say, geez, this is pretty embarrassing. We can't even do some simple legislation, or so-called simple legislation. What we are most concerned about, Madam Speaker, is the way which we think is this more insidious, the way in which this was all handled this week. And to correct the member for Brendan, the Attorney-General, who likes to throw mistruths around this House, absolutely not scared of time about work in this place. I've got nowhere else to be. I'm up until 12 a.m, 1 o'clock in the morning. I remember when we were here debating the Territory Coordinator Act, which went through to 1, everyone's like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. No, I was fine. That's my time to shine early in the morning. But if you want to get into the bad practice, we will be here to do the hard work. So, Attorney General, I can assure you that 6:30 p.m. is just when we're getting started. So if you want to start shoving down urgent legislation and offering us briefings at 6:30 p.m, unfortunately we hear the crossbench, 9:30 p.m. last night. That is no way a good way to do government in a good way, Madam Speaker. This is not good governing. This is not good practice of the Parliament. It is certainly not good practice when it comes to seemingly small but very important changes to Northern Territory law. This is not what Territorians expect. But we will still be here to do our job, Madam Speaker, because we are hearing time and time again from the Territory public, from stakeholders, from even business and industry leaders, that the way that this government acts, behaves, speaks, ignores, attacks, targets, diminishes, deflects. Pick what word you want today in the thesaurus, Madam Speaker, because we have heard every single word under the sun to describe this CLP government, some which I will not obviously repeat on parliamentary record because they are not for the Hansard, but we have heard every type of description in the way that this government is mishandling the territory. And I said from the start, Madam Speaker, that through my leadership as the opposition leader for the Territory Labor team, that I'll be constructive in the way I work. And I still remain today with that mindset. Although, Madam Speaker, the lack of reciprocal, constructive and positive ways to work with government is not being shared in the other way, Madam Speaker. So I get the way our system works. They've got the numbers, they'll shove through anything. But they're not even pretending to care what Territorians think. They're not even pretending to care what evidence and data may mean. They're not even pretending to care that they are making decisions based on some type of evidence or process. And we've seen today they actually don't even care about the parliamentary process. We have quotes, Madam Speaker, they've already been read out in the Northern Territory Parliament last sittings, from Leah Finocchiaro when she was the opposition leader, now Chief Minister, about how dangerous it is to put urgent legislation on without the time for proper scrutiny. Well, I obviously think she's either become a huge hypocrite or has some type of, memory loss, Madam Speaker. I'm not sure, maybe it's both, because she is not governing the territory in the way that she said. For 8 years, her messaging has been a complete fabrication, because now that Leah Finocchiaro is the Chief Minister, she's doing things her way. I think her own team's probably too scared to call out, because they'll probably have some type of consequence or punishment for speaking out about how bad her leadership is and how bad she is governing the territory and how bad she's ignoring the very Territorians who they claim gave them a mandate to govern. But guess what, Madam Speaker? That's the tricky thing, right? When you get into government, you actually have to govern. So despite all the rhetoric around having a mandate and Territorians voted for us, so we're now going to do whatever we want, no. Yes, we understand and we acknowledge Territorians did vote and they did elect a CLP government, but the government still has to do its duties of governing the Northern Territory, and it's supposed to be there for all Territorians, Madam Speaker. We are seeing a government shut down scrutiny. We're seeing a government ignore advocates. We're seeing a government pander to certain lobbyists, not all, of course, certain lobbyists. We're seeing a government stall legislation because of that, and we're seeing a government who push through and cut through parliamentary processes that have been established through the Westminster system for their own political purposes. That is not how good law is made in the Territory, Madam Speaker, and it will be their downfall. I'm calling it out now, but it'll be up to them to call themselves out. If the government is so blind and arrogant to their own practices and bad behaviour, who in that team, who in the CLP government is calling out their own bad behaviour? They're great at pointing the finger back to Labor, but guess what? You've been in for a year. Everyone is now asking, yes, what is the CLP doing about it? What is the CLP doing that we would like them to see? And there are some elements that have been achieved, but it's almost like you've run out of ideas. You shoved it all in the first 3 months last year. Oh, whoops, we've got 4 years to govern and now we've got 3 more years left. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do? All right, let's come up with something and shove that through too. So it's quite astounding, again, not in the positive way, but the negative way. It is quite astounding to me, Madam Speaker, to see that the CLP government 12 months in, have run out of ideas, even with the Territory Coordinator. What's your big process? What's your big star around rebuilding the Territory's economy? Oh, we're going to make the Territory Coordinator figure all that out. $21 million to date of that office being established, and not a single project of significance. Yes, Madam Speaker, you've heard me correctly. Not a single project declared with the Territory Coordinator Office. Guess what? $21 million would do if we put it into the DV sector to support the prevention of family, sexual and domestic violence, Madam Speaker. Guess what $21 million would do in education? Probably get us a huge amount of sports staff for our kids with complexities. Guess what $21 million in health would do, Madam Speaker? It would probably get us some of those specialists and allied health workers and the pharmacists who are on industrial action right now. It would support the work that our hard-working health professionals do in very challenging, complex situations across the Northern Territory. Madam Speaker, I'm going to have some water. Take a breath, yep. It's not enough time, member for Barkly. Got too much to rattle on for you, so don't worry about that. Madam Speaker, the Chief Minister has been a member of this parliament for 12 years. It will be 18 years in this parliament for Leah Finocchiaro, the Chief Minister, the member for Spillett, when we get to the next election in 2028. She should know the basic, or 16, that she should know the basic processes of Parliament. She should know that, Madam Speaker. And the Attorney-General likes to skite over how hard-working we are. We've just done 4 pieces of legislation. Yeah, that's great. We supported those 4 pieces of legislation. She is going to have her work cut out for her if she has already run out of ideas when it comes to the legislative schedule. And for anyone who doesn't know, Madam Speaker, the process of Parliament is controlled by the government of the day. That means the legislation predominantly, every so often we might get a private member's bill, predominantly is the government's job to run the scheduling of Parliament. So on days like today, where important legislation has fallen over because of the government's incompetence, days like today, where an urgent bill, which is actually administrative and shoved in on urgency because the government couldn't do their job, days like today, we would not have seen a single piece of legislation go to the Parliament. And if the Attorney-General wants to talk some numbers, Madam Speaker, in the 8 years that the Territory Labor team was in government, 260 pieces of legislation. Now, for anyone who's interested in what that means in days, Madam Speaker, on average, we sit for 31 days in the year. Northern Territory Parliament sits for 31 days of the year. We've got big electorates we've got to get out as well as do our jobs as members of Parliament. So that is an average, Madam Speaker, of altogether with the 8 years, 248 days of sitting in 8 years of the former Labor government. So 260 pieces of legislation in 248 days. That's for the Attorney-General because she's probably not good with numbers. 31 days per year, Madam Speaker, which we averaged, if you want to break it down, 32 pieces of legislation per year under a Labor government. So they've got a bit of catching up to do because they've got a little bit of catching up to do, and we would very much continue to do our job and to scrutinise the work that they're doing, or the work that they forgot to do, like today, the work that they forgot to do. We're very, very keen, Madam Speaker, to keep a close eye on their numbers, but particularly their legislative scheduling, because it looks like, even with a team of 17, they are incompetent of completing seemingly simple administrative legislation without having to backtrack and shove in on urgency because that someone happens to be the Chief Minister of the Northern Territory, Leah Finocchiaro, forgot to do her job. Was out talking, actually, she's not even out talking. I think she did her first press release on Monday after 7 weeks of being too scared. So running scared of the media, too frightened to answer tough questions about her integrity and her leadership, hides away, runs away, drives away. We've seen that video, Madam Speaker. Too scared to do her job. So imagine what it must be like within the CLP government when your own leader is too frightened to do their job but is a tyrant in frightening all of the other team members not to speak out and do their jobs properly in government. It is going to be a rocky another couple of years for them, and I'm really glad I'm not in their team, Madam Speaker. It's going to be very uncomfortable in their caucus for the next couple of years. Madam Speaker, when we come to the police public safety officers, I would really be interested to know, because the comment, I think it was made by Bill Yan, the Treasurer, the member for Namatjira, was, oh, now that we're doing this urgency piece of legislation today, now we're going to go out and actually talk to the Northern Territory Police Association what to do. So 3 months since the announcement on the 19th of June to an urgent piece of administrative legislation, changing 4 words apparently, to, oh, actually now we're 3 months in, we're shoving down administrative urgent legislation today, and now we're going to go out and talk to the NT Police Association about the ranking and the credentialing of what the PPSOs should look like. I am extremely concerned, Madam Speaker, that even within the government, that they are not doing what Territorians expect them to do, the very basics, in getting the expert advice through the NT Police Association to work with the government around what the PPSO powers will be under the Police Administrative Act, Madam Speaker. It's a huge concern. We will wait and see. We will obviously go and have our own conversations in the community. But some of the questions we are already receiving, Madam Speaker, is will the PPSOs who are recruited and then obviously go through their training, they'll have guns in public spaces, but what is the determinant or definition of being able to use that prohibited weapon under their trained positions? We don't have that information, Madam Speaker. I don't think the government has that information yet. So I implore the government to do a full body of work when it comes to the recruitment and the powers that the PPSOs will have. We are very sceptical, Madam Speaker, of the government's track record, because are the changes, or these powers, I should say, the powers of the PPSOs, will they be put into legislation or will they be put into regulation? Because the OC spray changes were made through regulation. They were not highlighted by the government. We found out by second-hand, third-hand, whatever, we ran Gazettal. So what information is the government going to provide to police officers, to people who are interested in becoming a PPSO, to housing officers or public transit officers, transit support officers who may be transitioning into these roles? What support will they have around these positions? And will there be a tiered system of officers, or will it be a straight ranking of officers? We're not sure because we haven't been provided that information. If you haven't got that information yet, can you please let us know, so when we do have that information, we can share that. When these PPSOs are commissioned by the, I understand, Police Commissioner, who's actually just an acting Police Commissioner, because the last one they sacked 6 months ago and they're still waiting to employ a new Police Commissioner. So 6 months in the Northern Territory without a Police Commissioner, an acting Police Commissioner at the moment. Will if it's still an acting Police Commissioner come October, will the acting Police Commissioner be commissioning these PPSOs, and under what ranking, and how will then that interact with some of the other officers or positions that are going to be brought into the police department, the police force, NT Police Force? So there's obviously some very key elements of public servants and people who are looking to be placed in those roles. How will that interact with the other duties that they have? We heard from the member for Drysdale around housing. So how will that work if it's just all going to become a PPSO? Will someone who's then going to check up on somebody's house, is it around public order and safety, will they have the guns in the holsters and rock up? Will they be pseudo police? Like, we don't understand what are the duties that then take that PPSO to a house, a public house. if it's under their jurisdiction. I believe the Chief Minister, I wrote it down, said the PPSOs will be responsible on public bus networks, public housing and public spaces. And I heard Casuarina Shopping Centre as an example of a public space, even though it's a commercial retailer, but it's public space. So how will PPSOs interact when there's an issue of housing? What are the guidelines or the training that's going to be used if someone is then carrying a gun under their trained position and they're dealing with a housing issue? So I would like some clarity around that. I don't think the government has that yet, and I acknowledge that. So in October, which we hope that this legislation will come back for Bite 2, the information around housing will be quite concerning. As I mentioned in an earlier speech this week, Madam Speaker, 40% of Northern Territorians who are renting are public housing renters. So how will that then be transferred in terms of the interaction with public housing renters? And every single person in this chamber has public housing in their electorate. So how will that interact? What processes will then be followed in the operational sense to call a PPSO, or will they be deployed in the same way through the 000? We heard some of the talk or the mention around that. So will it only be a intervention style position, or will it be a general engagement role? So they're the type of things we're being asked for by the public. We literally don't have an answer because we're not the government. The government doesn't have an answer because the positions haven't been created yet. We understand that. So please, if we can implore the government to have some type of frequently asked questions fact sheet to be able to provide, then we can direct anyone who's got questions of us in the opposition or indeed in our electorates to that Q&A essentially, and be able to get some of that information. And then also we're able to articulate as local members in our electorates, Madam Speaker, what these changes will mean and what these positions will do in their role. So more clarity around that will be very much welcomed, Madam Speaker. And when it comes to the process around the legislation, as we've mentioned, we're of the understanding of our briefing late yesterday evening that there will be further work around the Police Administration Act, the PAA. Timing would be helpful again. I mean, now you've got, 5 weeks to do some work. Let's hope that more of that work gets done. But around the processes of informing the public, recruiting those roles, the PPSO roles, the ranking and how they're commissioned, as well as what are their processes of duress when a PPSO is on duty or PPSOs are on duty for either the public or for those officers. So we'd like to obviously make sure that those PPSO are supported in their safety, in their work health and safety as well. If they're then commissioned by the Police Commissioner, what type of entitlements will they have? Will they have same entitlements? Will PPSOs be in our regional centres, or will they only be in Darwin, which is where a majority of the government sits? Are they going to be governing for the rest of the territory or just for the northern suburbs? We would like to have some of those responses back for the October sitting. So I know there is people upstairs probably making comment. Maybe the Chief Minister will be able to provide some of that information. If she doesn't, we acknowledge, but at this point in time right now, because of the last-minute urgent act that's coming out before us. But if there could be some very good work done between now and the October sittings, Madam Speaker, our Territory Labor opposition remains constructive, but we will do our job. We will be critical of the government when they're not providing information, answers or consultation or engagement with the Northern Territory. We will continue to ask the questions that we are asked. We will continue to pressure on the CLP government to answer those questions, and we will make sure that the Territory, if it's moving to some changes, that those changes are thought out, they are not rushed and they are not done on the run, which is what we are seeing time and time again by Leah Finocchiaro, the Chief Minister.
Member for Karama.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And it is a privilege to speak this morning in support of the Police Administration Amendment Public Safety Officer Bill 2025. And can I say that I also echo the sentiments expressed by the member for Drysdale. They were very similar in my electorate to what he has. And like him, I'm very proud to be part of this united government team that has taken great steps to reduce crime, rebuild our economy and restore our lifestyle over the last 12 months. And let me reiterate that whilst we have taken some great steps, we all acknowledge that there is much more work to be done. And this is not a time for complacency, but rather the opportunity to build on the growing confidence and optimism of Territorians to make a better future for all. And let me talk more broadly about that growing confidence and optimism within our community, because the introduction of this bill is an important part of our overall strategy to get the Territory back on track, and especially links to our commitments to reduce crime and restore our lifestyle. As mentioned previously, I base my judgments on the direct feedback I get from my electorate of Karama, a community I am privileged to serve. And I don't know where the opposition go, but I certainly connect with my community. I consult with them. And as I've said before, I've just gone out with my newsletter where I publicly listed the description of what we're going to do with public safety officers. And the feedback from that community is do it quicker. So when people say, have you consulted? I have. I don't know how many of the opposition went out and consulted with their community, but I certainly did. So, Madam Speaker, talking about optimism and confidence, I fondly recall on Sunday, straight after the election, walking around the Karama shops, being approached by many residents and local business people expressing their heartfelt thanks that the new CLP government had been elected and hopeful that we would get the Territory back on track. Some openly stated then that they had been planning to leave the Territory, but because we'd got elected, they decided to stay. Now, 12 months on, as I said, I stay very connected with my community. And whilst we still have important issues to address, including public housing reform, which I've talked about before, and I know my other colleagues, and we're working on that, the majority of my constituents confirm that they do feel more confident and optimistic than they did some 12 months ago. And just on Saturday evening, I had the chance to address local residents at the final Mille Community Markets, of which I'm a major sponsor. I was joined by my Northern Suburbs colleagues and also the member for Port Darwin. And I'll talk more about that and acknowledge the volunteers in an adjournment speech. But it's worth noting that we also have one of the leading business people in Mille get up and address the audience. Now, in addition to thanking all the volunteers, he took the opportunity to publicly congratulate the CLP government on the work taken to grow the Territory and openly acknowledge the positive growth in optimism and confidence over the last 12 months. And he has seen the local business sector and in the wider community, they feel a lot safer. That was one of the comments too. They're feeling safer. And he received strong applause from the audience. Now, that was unprompted by any one of us. But that was the feedback that we're getting from the community. So don't say we don't consult with the community. We do. And I also got similar feedback when I was at the Cyprus Food and Wine Festival later that night. I was in the queue trying to get a souvlaki. People came up and said, you guys are doing a great job, but keep going, hold the course. Don't get distracted by the bleatings of Labor and others. Get on with it. You're doing a good job, but there's a long way to go. And I agree with them. So, Madam Speaker, as I said, I take great comfort in that. But I've heard the Leader of the Opposition and I've heard Member for Johnson and all that. Their doom and gloom rantings, you know, about what we're doing and what we're going to do. So it made me reflect. What was the alternative scenario that could have happened 12 months ago? And the nightmare result could have been that we would have had a Labor Greens independent coalition. Now just think of that. This is the alternative, going back. Well, Madam Speaker, imagine if we had to suffer such a government. We would have had a government of instability and inertia. I say again, a government of instability and inertia. Move over Freddy Krueger. Just imagine who would have been Chief Minister within 12 months of this nightmare coalition. Well, Madam Speaker, I predict we would have been already up to our third Chief Minister. That's where they would have got to. We've got stability. They would have been all over fighting. Member for Gwodge would be looking to get in there. Whoever, if Eva Lawler had got there, they would have dumped her and it would have been all over the place. Yeah, they had a nice little reshuffle too. And as I said, it would have been a government of instability. But here, we've got to think a little bit further. Could you imagine what would have happened if the Greens and Independents manipulated this shambolic government with, let's say, the member for Johnson as Minister for Corrections and Police? Think of that. Think of that. Well, under this scenario, I don't know, in terms of corrections, we would not have more than 600 offenders off the streets, right? You wouldn't have had it, or behind bars. And we wouldn't have had genuine bail laws designed to protect our community. Now, in contrast, we probably would have had even more offenders released on bail, ready to offend the next day with no consequences for behaviour. That's what we would have been faced with. And sure, they would have said, oh, our prison numbers are low. That's because they're all out on the streets. And the community would not have felt safer. Now, thankfully, Madam Speaker, the community wasn't going to go down this nightmare path, and they voted for us. And they wanted a government that listened to them, heard their concerns, and was willing to act on their behalf. They wanted a government that had a clear plan to reduce crime, rebuild the economy and restore lifestyle. But not just a plan, but willing to deliver on that plan. And we had a plan, and we're delivering on it. And some of those things had to be done on urgency because we already foreshadowed that's what we'd do. And that's what the people wanted us for. So I then hear the Leader of the Opposition going back to Crocs in the Cabinet, that book, Crocs in the Cabinet. Now, she may forget, I actually mentioned this in my maiden speech, Madam Speaker. And I said, yes, it was a shame. There was a bit of shambolic government there. But the pity was that the Gunner, Files, Lawler government, instead of just learning from that, they took it as a manual of operation. That became the way of how they operate. It was their guidance of how to do it. Now, I don't know where this government's been. They seem to forget this. And they talk about legislation. Oh, we did 32 pieces of legislation. Well, none of that was scrutinised because they didn't have a scrutiny committee. So, you come off at us. And could you imagine that shambolic Labor government with the Greens that we might have had? Labor probably would have held sway and said, no, we won't have a scrutiny committee. So we would have come on in this term and still have no scrutiny committee. There would have been nothing to bleat about because it wasn't there. So don't come off at us. We're the only ones that actually introduced it. We're pushing it along. And I'm just getting really worried about this opposition. They don't seem to listen to the real community, which I do, which I know all our members do. I know the member for Drysdale do. I know the member for Blaine and all the others. We do know that we need public housing safety officers with police powers. This is a welcome development in our community. We need to address some of those issues in public housing against the extreme vandalism we get. The antisocial behaviour 25 times a night every month. That's what the community wants us to address. This allows us, they're not using them. It's a bit like saying the police are going to interfere with every citizen. They're not. If you don't do the crime, you won't be impacted at all. This is only because of the bad behaviour. We are addressing that. And we actually put the community, the neighbours first and foremost. So this particular Labor caucus now, I don't know where they caucus. I think they caucus under the shade structure because they're obviously getting a bit sunstruck and their memory's going. They can't quite remember all the shambolic activities they did. And they keep coming at us about scrutiny. They did no scrutiny at all. And as I said, if they'd actually got in, they probably wouldn't have reintroduced it. The Greens may have pushed for it and Independents may have pushed for it, but I think given the makeup, they would have said, oh, no, we can't have that. Can't let the CLP come to us. We need to just sort of park that to the side. And they would have done all their shenanigans. Believe me, we have been open and honest. We came with a plan and we said, we do need to put these bail laws through on urgency, and we will, and we're committed to doing it. So we've stayed true to what we've told the community. And when you talk about an election, I'll give you a bit of advice on election. The electorate will come back and say, now, do we pick a government where they actually told us what they were going to do and they did it? Now, we may not have agreed with everything, but give them credit. They told us what they were going to do and they've done it. Or would you pick a Labor government and say, oh, no, you can't do that. Look, nothing's happened. They're not for all the Territorians. You can't do... What do you mean we're not for all the Territorians? We're for most of them because they actually voted for us. So when you say deliver legislation for all, what about all the people who voted for us? You're just ignoring them. You're neglecting them. And they will remember that neglect. And it continues on. I really wish we had a constructive opposition, one that did hold us to account properly. That's okay, and get in and discuss the bills as we do. But don't go off at us for delivering on what we promised to the community, because I actually hold that to my heart. I'm very proud of it, and I'm really proud of our whole government and our whole team. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Are there any other speakers? Member for Mulca. You only have a few minutes, Member for Mulca, but please continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Before lunch, that means.
Before lunch.
You have the
Yes.
full 30 minutes, but 2 minutes
Where's
before
everybody?
lunch.
Madam Speaker, where's everybody? Should be on the table there. This is a very big joke. Very big joke. Guns. Guns. Look how many people are in prison now, and who are in prison that's got the highest number? The black people. The black people. And these guns are going to be targeting them as well, our people. Madam Speaker, I rise to speak on the Police Administration Amendment Police Public Service Officer Bill. This bill has just plucked from thin air. From thin air. What are you people talking about? What are we talking about, please? What are we talking about? I'm not just talking about this government or the opposition that was in there, the system in the government here, the system here. You need to recognize there are other people like myself. I come from a Yolngu government, indigenous government. We have our law, and we have never been ceded. 1 minute, we have the anti-discrimination bill coming up that has been on the notice paper for 30 days. And later, yesterday, this bill magically appeared. It's a busy week. I have been in meetings this morning, and I haven't had time for a briefing on this bill. At 10 a.m. this morning, we saw the bill. I don't know if this bill is the only opportunity we will have. To discuss transit officer becoming police officers and carrying guns on buses, but with no information before me, I assume that it is. Madam Speaker.
Member for Mulca, I apologise, but it's just on midday.
Yeah.
You can conclude your speech after question time this afternoon.
I will. Thank you very much.
The Assembly stands
Madam
suspended
Speaker.
until 2 p.m. Member for Mulca, you have 27 minutes remaining on your contribution.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I said before lunch, this bill is about guns and intimidation of Aboriginal people on buses and intimidation of Aboriginal people in public housing. We do not feel safe with more guns, and we have been given no notice of this bill. As members of Parliament, we have been given no respect to see the bill before 10 a.m. today. Our communities in Darwin and elsewhere are being given no respect to see the bill and have an opportunity to say what they think about more guns in our communities. Section 19 of the Act says the Commissioner can give an opportunity, an appointment rather, that outlines what powers someone will have. This is the power to give a gun and shoot people. Madam Speaker, this is not a simple bill. It is a very complicated bill. It is a bill about entrenched systemic racism. It is a bill that does not close the gap. It is a bill that does not reflect the Aboriginal Justice Agreement. It is a bill that does not reflect the Aboriginal deaths in custody recommendations. It is a bill that does not bring partnership with vulnerable communities. It is a bill that gives power to no other jurisdiction in Australia has ever had. Madam Speaker, I feel this is a gross misuse of Parliament today to bring this bill on urgency and pretend that it is a simple. This our government is making up laws without consultation, without planning, and without thinking things through. What does giving transit officers, what does giving transit officers a gun do? How many times have the transit officers needed to shoot someone? If someone is not wearing clean clothes on the bus, does that require a gun? We can ask the same question of all police. How often do they need to use their guns to shoot someone? Zachariah Ralph did not need to use his gun. He did not need to shoot Komunjai Walker 3 times, and yet he did. And now he is dead. My Wawa of the beach at Elcho Island, did not need to be shot on the beach on Elcho Island because there were elders there who wanted to take care of that situation. They wanted to take care of the situation and care for my Wawa. But the police did shoot my Wawa, and he is also dead. Madam Speaker, guns bring violence and death, and we should be looking for other ways that we can work and keep people safe. This government should be doing the hard work of working with vulnerable people and vulnerable communities and address the underlying issues. I've been calling that for the last 9 years. Underlying issues. Doesn't go through any ears. Instead, they are handing out weapons like they are lollies. Pepper spray and guns are being thrown out of the Santa Claus sack as though they will fix the problem, but they will create greater problems. Madam Speaker, I continue to be very disappointed in this government and very worried for the future of the NT, because the damage done in these past 12 months may be very long-lasting. This system is broken, and the government is treating us as if we are nobody, but we are sovereign people. Aboriginal people are sovereign people. We never ceded our sovereignty to anyone. And the government that sits here in this parliament need to respect us. We have authority for our people. We have leaders, and we need to be included in the decision making. Madam Speaker, these bills are targeting Indigenous people. They may say this bill is not targeting us, but look at the prisons. They are building, want to make safe communities around here, but who is it safe for? It's not safe for our people, but there are no community-led solutions. There are no real policies to address the underlying issues. Prisoners in jail are not safe. They are not being helped. I've visited the watch house, and the conditions are not safe. They should be back in the hands of their people on country. They should be in programs with their elders and to bring discipline and help them to find their gift and talent and be who they are really. We are not being consulted and we are not being included. Instead, we are being targeted and wrecked and stacked in prisons, as Barbara Shaw said out at the front of this parliament. And this bill is part of a campaign for this government to cause more harm in the Northern Territory. We need to work together if we want to bring real safety, long-lasting safety for everyone in our community, and bringing bills on urgency, serious bills like this one is not the way to build safe communities. When we haven't had chance to look at the changes and we haven't had chances to talk about more guns and more police, who are we from? Who are we? We know from experience will unfairly target Aboriginal people. I'll say that again. Who we are, who we know from experience will unfairly target Aboriginal people. Our communities need to be included in the discussions about our people, and this is not happening. And we are not happy. Madam Speaker, this is very, very worrying, and it really affects me as an Aboriginal leader standing here in the chamber as well, trying to come and work with a government, whether it is this government now or another government that is in another party in that position. I have seen it is the system in here. It is the system, the Westminster system. It doesn't suit and fit with Indigenous system that we have in the law of the land and how it runs. And I am here to try and tell, no, it doesn't work. It doesn't work together. We must listen to one another and help one another. We will make better communities safe, and we will make a life that we will enjoy together. Our culture is all about sharing. Our culture is all about helping one another. Our culture is all about serving people to make a pathway for the future of our children, looking back and seeing where we've been. We have survived for more than 70 years on this land, and we are still here. But now we have run into a stumbling block that we are struggling to survive. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we've heard a lot about violence in this chamber and safety, and like everyone else in this chamber, I believe that no woman should ever have to endure an attack when she's out in public. No child should ever have to fear knives in their community. Every single one of us wants safety. We want safety on public transport, in public housing, in our streets and in our homes. And like some of the stories that we heard today, I have many people in my electorate coming to me because they don't feel safe. Women who've been attacked walking home. A couple who were attacked just this weekend, bashed and ended up in hospital with severe injuries on the same weekend as the anti-immigration rallies, attacked because of the colour of their skin. And women and children who are not safe at home because of domestic and family violence and cannot find a safe place to stay because our refuges don't have the money to repair their infrastructure. Young people who are not safe when they're growing up without access to stable houses or support because there is no affordable housing. Families who are not safe because they can't get the urgent mental health support they need. The member for Drysdale talked about addressing the root causes, and we can see and we know that addressing root causes actually works. When we look to places with extreme violence, far beyond what we're seeing here, places like Glasgow, places like Baltimore, they have had incredible success in reducing violence. And let me be clear, this was not by putting more guns on buses or in public housing. And we should also listen to the wisdom here in this chamber from our colleague, the member for Mulka, who has come into this chamber for 9 years telling us that there are other ways. There are other ways that can and do work, that do not involve guns, do not involve harm and death. We need to listen to this wisdom. Madam Speaker, if we rush through laws without carefully thinking about what will actually work, then we're not making our communities safer. We're just shifting risk from one place to another. This Parliament has a responsibility to not just act, but to act wisely. And of course it is urgent to make sure that our community is safe. But this Parliament must never accept the argument that because something was spoken about in an election campaign or reported in the media, it can be rammed through this chamber without proper scrutiny. That is not democracy, and that is not how good law is made. It's reckless to rush through laws on urgency without carefully considering the real risks and unintended consequences. Without having had, as we've heard, a 5-minute briefing late last night and seeing the bill at 10 o'clock this morning, it remains unclear to me, and what should concern all of us is, are we being asked to vote today on the principle only, while the actual details of how these officers will operate, what training they will receive, what oversight they will be subject to, and how they will be held accountable are worked out outside these walls? Because if that is the case, let's be very clear, this is not a simple administrative change. This is a profound shift in how public safety is delivered in our community. And if that's what we are doing today with this bill, then let's be clear and honest about it. If the safeguards are not defined in legislation, if they're left to be decided later behind closed doors, then this Parliament is failing in its duty to Territorians. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? Member for Casuarina.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I stand here today with one clear message that our community in Casuarina wants. Safety, Madam Speaker. And this government is delivering safety. We are acting while the opposition slept at the wheel. Madam Speaker, everywhere I go, whether it's Casuarina Square, Nakara shops, TV bus stop, Tripstone Middle School, or Royal Darwin Hospital, I hear the same thing, Madam Speaker. People just want to feel safe. Parents want their children to walk to school without fear. Seniors want to enjoy their afternoon walks without harassment. Small business owners want to open their doors without worrying about crime, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this bill and the reforms we have delivered over the past year are about exactly that, Madam Speaker. They are about safety. They are about consequences. They are about supporting police so they can support us, Madam Speaker. This is what getting with job we are elected to do, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this bill makes a technical change to the Police Administration Act. It adds police public safety officers to the list of officers formally recognized. So we can start recruiting for those roles, so we can get on with the job, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, that might sound like a paperwork, but Madam Speaker, in Casuarina, it means more uniform, more uniforms on the ground, more people in our hotspots, more eyes and ears in the community, and more support for police as soon as possible, Madam Speaker. If you shop at Casuarina Square, if you catch the bus at the TV, if you live near Nakara or Wanguri shops, you know why that matters, Madam Speaker. PPSOs will be there, step in when antisocial behavior flares up. They will be visible. They will deter a trouble, and they will back up our police, so police can focus on the serious crime, Madam Speaker. And we want them as soon as possible at the scene, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this government has already delivered some of the strongest laws in the nation, and I want to repeat them because the people of Casuarina repeat their concerns to me every day. Madam Speaker, we delivered Eckland's Law, the strongest bail laws in Australia. We introduced mandatory minimum sentences for assaults on frontline workers, because no nurse, no teacher, no shop worker in Casuarina should be ever attacked for simply doing their job. And violent criminals should be behind the bars, not in our streets, as Labor want. Madam Speaker, we created new offences for ram raids and for people who post and boast about their crimes online, because the crime should never be glorified, Madam Speaker. We gave police running powers to shop knives before tragedy strikes. Hundreds of knives and edge weapons have been taken off the streets, Madam Speaker. Thanks to these measures, Madam Speaker, these are not abstract laws. These are the laws written for the streets, shops, and homes of Casuarina and the whole NT, Madam Speaker. They are laws that mean fewer victims, more offenders facing consequences, and safer families. Madam Speaker, our police now have new powers for nuisance drinking and powers of entry. Public safety officers will step in and ensure.
Take your seat, member for Casuarina. What's your point of order, member for Gwadja?
Order 9, there's no quorum in the parliament at the moment.
2, 4, 6.
There is now, they've just run in.
State of the House.
Has to be 10. So they've run in now. I'll just maintain the rules of the assembly. I thought you might like that.
No, I think that it's well in order to maintain the state of the House. 10 members have to be present. Please continue, member for Casuarina.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So there's a public safety officer will step in and ensure these steps are taken, Madam Speaker. It means these officers will allow other police to respond to job quickly. Madam Speaker, action requires resources. That's why this government has delivered a record 1.5 billion investment in police, courts and corrections. In 1 year, Madam Speaker, we have welcomed 146 new police graduates, brought on 199 new correctional officers, and I look forward to seeing the numbers of PPA SOs soon, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, safety is not only about laws and police, it is also about breaking cycles. That's why we created a school attendance officers, Madam Speaker. Already 388 more kids back in classroom where they belong, not roaming in the streets like Labor celebrated, Madam Speaker. In Casuarina, this means fewer kids roaming in the shopping centres during school hours. It means fewer young people hanging around the bus stops. It means more young people learning, achieving, and building a future, Madam Speaker. We are on this side now, Madam Speaker, that education is most important pillar in creating productive members of our society. Madam Speaker, we also deliver the Circuit Breaker program, supporting 94 children and their families to deal with domestic violence, health, and education issues. And we put in place 137 family responsibility agreements to restore accountability, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in Casuarina, these programs mean fewer excuses and more accountability. They mean families getting the support they need to keep the kids on the track, instead of letting crime take a hold, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we cannot talk about supporting police without talking about pay. We have put a new EBA agreement on the table, one that keeps NT police as the highest paid in the country. Constables, senior constables, sergeants, and senior sergeants will remain number 1. Superintendents will be the second highest nationally, Madam Speaker. We back our police on this side of the chamber, Madam Speaker. This isn't just about money. It's about respect. It's about telling police in Casuarina, we value your work, we respect your sacrifice, and we want you to stay in the territory, Madam Speaker. We want police across Australia to look north and say, the NT is the best place to serve. So thank you to all the former and current members of our police across the territory, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on 1st September, we began the Osprey trial. As Chief Minister mentioned yesterday, that in one day alone, more than 250 Territorians purchased Osprey. The average age was, Madam Speaker, 47 years old. That shows people are taking this responsibly. In Casuarina, moms and dads have told me this gives us a peace of mind, Madam Speaker. Seniors have told me this makes me feel safer walking at night. And when a handful of people who were prohibited tried to buy it, police acted immediately. Notices to appear were issued. The message is clear, Madam Speaker. If you try to break the rules, police will find you and you will face the consequences. Madam Speaker, this is about giving Territorians a more choice in their personal safety. And it is about backing that choice with police powers to make sure it is safe. Madam Speaker, this week also passed the Transport Legislation Amendment Bill. This bill gives police on-the-spot fines for unlicensed drivers. It means police can deal swiftly with unsupervised learners and never licensed drivers. It frees the courts to deal with the most serious offenders, Madam Speaker. What does that mean in Casuarina, Madam Speaker? It means safer roads for families in driving down Trevor Road. It means fewer risks for students crossing near Dripstone. It means cleaning up abandoned vehicles in our suburbs. Madam Speaker, as Minister Yan said, at the heart of that bill is giving police more options, giving transit officers powers to keep buses safe, and giving courts stronger tools for dangerous drivers. All this matters for Casuarina families who rely on the safe roads and safe buses every day, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I will repeat the message because it matters. Casuarina families want to feel safe. Casuarina seniors want to walk without fear. Casuarina kids deserve safe schools and safe streets. Casuarina businesses deserve safe shopping centers and safe customers. That is why we are delivering public police safety officers urgently, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we made a promise to Territorians. We would take action, deliver certainty, and restore safety. We are delivering on that promise, Madam Speaker. And we will keep delivering because Casuarina deserves safety. In fact, whole territory needs a safety, Madam Speaker. And this government will not stop until we deliver it. We are getting on with the job, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in conclusion, today's bill is urgent because without it, we cannot even begin the industrial negotiations that will set the pay and conditions of this new role. Recruitment is scheduled to commence in October, and that can only happen once this rank is formally created. Madam Speaker, the creation of the Police Public Safety Officer is not just another piece of red tape. It is vital reform for our community, Madam Speaker. These officers will eventually bring together the work of police auxiliaries, public safety, housing officers, and transit safety officers. They will have police powers under the Act, but with specific instruments of appointment that clearly set out their responsibility, Madam Speaker. In the plain language, Madam Speaker, PPSOs will be visible, approachable, and present in the very places every community needs them most. They will be forward-facing officers, engaging with the public, tackling antisocial behavior, supporting our public housing areas, and making our public transport safer. Madam Speaker, for Casuarina, this means something very real. It means more officers at Casuarina Square when antisocial behavior flares. It means more support around TV and Nakara bus stops. It means more engagement in a housing presence to prevent problems before they escalate. Madam Speaker, today's bill is about giving our police force that support it needs, giving our community the safety it deserves, and giving the Northern Territory a model of policing that works for the future, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we promised action, certainty, and security. With this bill, with PPSOs, and with every reform we are delivering, we are keeping that promise for Casuarina and for the Territory. I commend this reform to the House. Thank you.
Member for Fanny Bay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So for too long, the people of the Northern Territory were let down by a government that promised accountability but delivered the exact opposite. From 2016 right through to 2024, the Labor government in the Territory failed a fundamental test of leadership, to be honest, to be transparent, and to listen to the community. Madam Speaker, we know that crime in the Northern Territory did not spiral out of control overnight. It was made worse year after year by a government that buried reports, dodged scrutiny, and preferred press conferences to the plain truths. They chose secrecy over transparency, spin over substance, and political survival over the safety of Territorians. When our communities raised their voices, they were brushed aside. When frontline police, community organisations and local leaders offered solutions, they were left out of the conversation altogether. Instead of genuine consultation, all we got was a closed door, decisions made behind closed doors, stitched up committees and top-down directives with no input from the people who know the Territory best, Territorians themselves. The tragic reality is clear. Crime, antisocial behaviour and violence worsened under their watch, but not because we lacked answers, but because we lacked leadership willing to face up the truth. For 8 long years, the previous Labor government treated crime statistics as a public relations problem to be managed, rather than a community crisis to be fixed. And who paid the price? Ordinary Territorians, families who feel unsafe in their homes, small businesses counting the cost of break-ins, frontline workers stretched beyond their limits. I clearly remember the former Labor government, when approached by small business owners, pleading for help after being broken into again and again and again. All they said was, keep increasing your security, put up more CCTV, put up more roller shutters, and no action to stop the actual behaviour. Businesses, families, children and communities all left behind when the former Labor government stopped listening. We deserve better than this culture of secrecy. We deserve better than promises without action. We deserve a government that openly consults, works hand in hand with police, service providers, victims, business owners, residents, and everyone. And above all, we deserve leadership that puts people's safety ahead of politics. We don't deserve the cherry picking and the twisting of information to suit the narrative of those opposite. That is the change Territorians have demanded, and that is what we are giving them. The failures of the Labor government between 2016 and 2024 will not be repeated by this Finocchiaro CLP government. Because Territorians are strong, Territorians are resilient, but Territorians should not have to face crime on their own. It's time for a government that puts up with safety, puts the safety of our people first, and refuses to hide the truth from those it serves. We've heard again and again from those opposite about consultation, transparency, allowing time to do the work. Well, Madam Speaker, did you know that between 2016 and 2024, the previous Labor government in the Northern Territory pushed through a significant number of legislative changes, frequently without the thorough consultation or transparency with the public and relative authorities? During the 13th and 14th Assemblies, the Labor government's tenure, many bills were passed, covering issues from crime and law enforcement to resource management and social policy. These legislative pushes included major reforms and contentious changes, like adjustments to sentencing laws, bail reforms, and the overhaul of crime statistics reporting methods. But unlike our changes to date, the former government made changes that put the criminals' rights ahead of the rights of victims. The Labor government was known for pushing through bills through parliamentary sessions rapidly, often limiting opportunities for detailed review, community input, or transparent reporting on the rationale and impact of changes. The frequency and style of lawmaking led to widespread criticism from local authorities and the public, particularly on crime-related policy, where the voices from frontline services and victims groups were routinely sidelined. This saw multiple amendments and new acts related to criminal law, policing and public order, often passed without extensive consultation with the police, with the communities, a process widely seen as lacking in transparency. The absence of genuine engagement on key crime legislation fuelled public frustration and concerns about effectiveness and fairness in addressing territory crime rates. 3 words, Madam Speaker: pot, kettle, black. In May 2024, the NT's Anti-Discrimination Commissioner wrote to the then AG, the member for Gwadja, regarding legislative changes being pushed through on urgency, stating that he was disappointed that he wasn't consulted prior to the bill being introduced, especially given that those changes intended to exclude the application of the Anti-Discrimination Act. Madam Speaker, our government, the Leah Finocchiaro CLP government, has had continual consultation with the NT Police Association. We are continually talking to police. We are continuing to talk to Territorians. Madam Speaker, I'm talking to people in and around the Fanny Bay, the Parup shops. We want these changes. We are sick and tired of people continually breaking the law, continually allowed to be disrupting the lives of ordinary law-abiding citizens. These changes will help with that. We will have additional police out in the street that can help monitor and control what happens in and around our suburbs. This legislative change is a simple administrative change to allow us to get on with the job of securing police public safety officers. And Madam Speaker, I commend this amendment to the House.
Member for Gwadja.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I do rise to speak in response to this bill that is before the Assembly. And I pick up on the comments made by the member for Fanny Bay. She's clearly been working very hard with her mate ChatGPT this afternoon to prepare that speech. Because, Madam Speaker, what I can say is, hand on heart, when I was the Northern Territory Attorney-General, I absolutely met regularly with the domestic family violence sector and the women's legal services, legal aid and all of our legal sector on all of the reform that we did. And absolutely, we acknowledge that there were things, yes, that we did do on urgency. The difference between us and the government is we communicated that with the then opposition, which is now the government, around our intentions to pass things on urgency and give them ample time. What we did see, and we've spoken about in length at this chamber today, is a government offering briefings at 6:30 and 9:30 at night, not giving members the chance to fully absorb what is in the bill. So, look, I am talking about this, Madam Speaker, because I do think it is quite serious, and I do think that there are areas that are quite grey. And those areas, Madam Speaker, relate to, yes, we know that this legislation has to be passed in order to allow...
Sorry, Member for Fanny Bay.
The timer hasn't started.
Very good.
Yeah.
No. Might have been about 5. I actually can't see because I don't have my glasses on, but...
Okay, that's enough, thanks. Continue, Member for Gwadja.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. But I think one of the questions that I do have for the government, and given the short time I do seek clarification on, this legislation does allow for the police to be able to start negotiations with the government and the NTPA on the pathway forward, the levels and the wages and entitlements and so forth. But what is unclear, Mr Deputy Speaker, is will it be the Parliament that gets to have a debate around whether transit safety officers and housing safety officers are then issued or legislatively able to hold guns, or is it the Northern Territory Police that will determine and commission the level that these transit safety and housing officers will have when they are transferred to sit under the Northern Territory Police Force? Because I think that is something that is incredibly important. That's something that we all want to know. And I think that that's certainly been left in a bit of a grey area, Mr Deputy Speaker. So I just ask a simple question. Will this be a matter that the Parliament does get to come back and talk on, as the member for Johnson and the member for Mulga have raised in the chamber tonight, or is that going to be a matter for the police who will just determine then, or through regulation, yes, this transit safety officer and housing officer now, safety officer now are at this level, they'll be able to make a determination as to whether or not they're able to carry a gun on active duty. So, Mr Deputy Speaker, I think it is incredibly important to absolutely acknowledge that the Territory is a very unique jurisdiction in its makeup, and we do have a diverse range of Territorians. And when we are talking about them, we are culturally rich with population, many communities still carrying the wounds of historical over-policing and state interventions from even before self-government in the Northern Territory, Mr Deputy Speaker. In many remote and urban Aboriginal communities, there are significant mistrust issues with authorities, and we've seen that very recently, and we've heard that very recently from a number of advocacy groups, legal bodies and Aboriginal Territorians, that there needs to be significant work in rebuilding the relationships and trust with people. So, look, I do worry as a remote member in this Assembly. Many of my constituents on a daily basis are coming into town to access services. They're staying with family members in social housing, community housing and public housing. I do worry that introducing guns into everyday housing and transportation safety officers, interactions risks igniting those traumas and undermining years of work to build those relationships. Because I think, Mr Deputy Speaker, when we think about it, imagine a family having their interaction with a housing safety officer coming into their home to talk to them and engage with them, and they've got a gun strapped to their pocket. That is a pretty scary experience for many people, particularly many people in my communities, particularly the Warlpiri communities, who have experienced a lot of trauma from the shooting of Kumanjay Walker. And through the evidence in the inquest, there is a lot of trauma there, and I worry that giving people the ability to do that will reopen a lot of trauma and will certainly instantly enable people to feel on edge and potentially resolve in conflict, Mr Deputy Speaker. So I think for families, the sight will make them not feel safe, and it will be intimidating for many families across the Territory. I just want to, highlight as well the evidence simply doesn't support this move, Mr Deputy Speaker. When we actually look at practices in Australia and what is being done in those areas, right across Australia, Mr Deputy Speaker, safety, compliance and transit officers, whether it is housing, transport or local government, are currently already operating effectively without guns. Now, I think that the fact is, Mr Deputy Speaker, Where violence or serious crime is encountered, these officers are absolutely trained to step back and call the police, who are specialists in training, resourcing, accountability to handle such matters. And we've all seen that here. We're all elected members. We've all seen officers doing that work. And, you know, I absolutely acknowledge the hard work of the Northern Territory Police Force when it comes to working in these situations. I believe, though, Mr Deputy Speaker, that there is other ways. And as I've said, politics is a contest of ideas. I accept that. I think that there is more work that we can do. Instead of arming these officers, we should be investing to help them with training, with compliance, with competency and de-escalation skills. I think they are some of the most integral things that we should be working on, Mr Deputy Speaker. I'm hopeful that any new public housing and safety officer will absolutely have to wear a body-worn camera because those communication devices and those strong partnerships with other police or constables and officers will help make sure that we cannot get to a situation that escalates beyond scope and there is no footage available at the time to be used as evidence in a conflict situation or if there is a recorded dispute. So I think that that is incredibly important. Mr Deputy Speaker, I think one issue that we have heard, and particularly in my community of Yuendumu, is the community saying time and time again, we don't need guns in our streets and in our homes. We need better, stronger relationships with our authorities. And I think that is some incredible work that can be done. I think, Mr Deputy Speaker, there is a huge volume of work that can be undertaken about, working to do work around alternative first responder models. Now, this is a model that has been adapted and implemented in parts of the United Kingdom and certainly in New Mexico and I believe it's Arizona in the United States. And these are alternative first responders are made up of a unique group of people. They're made up of local language speakers in those communities. They are also made up of trained psychologists. They are made up of medical practitioners, experts in de-escalation, and of course, people who are considered to be working in partnership with the police, like Aboriginal liaison officers or community-based officers. They're able to do that work, and in some instances, when you look at places like New Mexico, they have had a huge decline in the number of presentations that were being reported to police because the alternative first responder model was able to be stood up and they were able to intervene very early on in the matter before it even resulted in an altercation or before it even resulted in police being called to attend. These are things that we can do to be getting smarter on our responses to the justice system and better supporting the justice system. Mechanisms that are in place to look at de-escalating conflict and to resolving conflict before it starts, addressing, as we've heard in this very chamber, mental health conditions, substance addiction, all of these things, if we get in early, we can address them. I think that is incredibly important that we should be looking at, Mr Deputy Speaker. Look, of course, the introduction of potential firearms to housing safety officers and transit safety officers is a solution in search of a problem, is my view, Mr Deputy Speaker. It risks lives, it absolutely damages trust and diverts us from what really works. That is prevention, that is de-escalation, that is community-led initiatives. Our communities do deserve community safety, no one is disputing that, but safety has to be built on respect, relationships, not fear and force. So I think it is important. I think, Chief Minister, I understand and acknowledge that you've put the bill before the Assembly. I just ask again for some clarification around today we are allowing those officers to start to be recruited with commencement late to beginning of next year. In terms of what equipment officers will be carrying, is that a decision that the Police Commissioner will make in line with the executive team around the commission level that they're at, or is that a matter that the Parliament will have to come through again in, I think you said it was tranche 2, in terms of the Police Administration Act? I think that's just the questions that the member for Mulcair and Johnson have raised tonight. Certainly, I think in some part, bringing transit safety officers and housing officers into a centralised group is something that is meritorious. I think it does allow that communication to be stronger and working closely together. I think housing safety officers in particular have always had a good working relationship with the Department of Territory Families in terms of identifying where some families have shown signs of needing additional support. They're able to get in there early and do so. So Mr Deputy Speaker, I do thank the Assembly for allowing me to have my contribution tonight, and I look forward to any further members' contributions.
Thank you. Member for Gwadja. Are there any further speakers? No further speakers. I call the Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank everyone in the chamber for contributing to this important debate. It is a significant piece of reform that we are embarking on, but it is not a significant and substance piece of legislation we are debating today, and I appreciate everyone is very interested in what that reform is going to look like, but at its core, what this does is just create the opportunity to then move forward with the rest of the reform. So powers and remuneration and all of those things are not included in the Police Administration Act. They are dealt with separately. They will be dealt with by the Commissioner in consultation with the NTPA. So that's how that process works, exactly the same as all of the other types of police that we have, and whether it's our wonderful ACPOs or our constables or our pallies. So that work has to happen. And there was a lot of discussion this morning around urgency, around why didn't we consult already, and I think it's a bit cute to say that because we cannot until this happens, because what are you consulting on? It's not real. So we have to create the position so that there can be a proper, this is not consultation like, oh, NTPA, what do you think about this? Oh, great, okay, what do I think about this? It's not that. It's proper industrial relations consultation. So it's to literally develop, build, and form an EBA. So you can appreciate that that's actually a very structured process. So this will create that new position. We can then move forward and do all of those other things, including remuneration, including what powers they'll have, and all of those things, and that will be done exactly how normally things will be done. The next piece of legislation that the Chamber will see about this relates to amendments to the Housing Act, the Surveillance Devices Act and the Public Transport Passenger Safety Act. So the powers in and of themselves are not in the Police Administration Act. They're in an instrument which is separate and to be determined by the Police Commissioner, again, as I said, in consultation with the NTPA. So the next bill coming on the police public safety officers will be in relation to incorporating housing, transport and the surveillance devices piece that has to happen. But of course we will be keeping the community and the Parliament abreast of the reform process, obviously. And we've been really clear that the sooner we can move through these processes means the sooner we can go to recruitment, because as I said earlier, you can't recruit to a position if you don't know what you might get paid or what you're even going to have to do or how you're going to do it. So we have to do that first. So you can see there's a very clear sequence of events that have to happen, and I put that in my press release as well so that everyone understands. And so I thank members for their contribution. Obviously, some of it is just so extreme in content that I'm not even going to dignify it with a reply, to be honest. But we are not reinventing the wheel here. This is something that has been done by the AFP, and in fact, the AFP Association President is a PSO. Victoria, when I met with the Victorian Police Association, they said they're begging their government for more of them. So we know this is a tried and tested system. We are not reinventing the wheel here. And what we will be doing is having just that greater support, greater training, greater command, all of those things to deliver community safety. I'm not sure why some members opposite think there's going to be transit safety officers wielding guns all over public buses, but if you guys want to run a scare campaign and have that narrative, that's entirely a matter for you. It's actually quite offensive to our transit safety officers and our police, who conduct themselves with the utmost integrity, discipline, and of course in line with their training every single day, which is why I'm not going into all that rubbish. But I commend the bill to the House. This is a really important first step, and let's get on with it.
Thank you. The question is that the bill be read a second time. Those of that opinion say aye, to the contrary no. Aye. I think the ayes have it. The Clerk.
A bill for an Act to amend the Police Administration Act 1978.
Minister.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I seek leave to move the third reading.
Is leave granted?
No. Aye.
No. We will move to consideration in detail. Okay, honourable members, before we commence, I just thought I'd remind all members that consideration in detail is the opportunity for the Assembly to give detailed consideration of the wording of the bill. Its purpose is to clarify the operation of individual clauses and, with that clarification, agree whether the wording of each clause is correct or should be amended. That is why on each clause I propose that the clause stand as printed. The question before the Assembly is whether the wording of the clause is right. Members may speak repeatedly to work through the details of the clause. Members may speak to give their views on the merits and operation of the clause, or to seek information on the operation of the clause from the Minister. The debate must be relevant to the wording of the clause. This can include how the clause interacts with other clauses. I also note that when I pose the question that the clause stand as printed, I'm inviting members to speak to that question. The appropriate response, I'm advised, is not to say no, but to stand and seek the call. Thank you. Okay, order. The Assembly will consider the Police Administration Amendment, Police Public Safety Officers Bill 2025, Serial 39. There are 7 clauses. Are there any particular clauses? So, are there any clauses you have issues with?
At 2 and 4, please.
2 and 4? Possibly 5.
And possibly 5? 2, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Maybe I should just go through them all one of one if you want.
Number 1's fine.
Okay, so let's... Okay. The question is that clause 1 stand as printed. Those that opinion say aye, to the contrary no. Aye. I think the ayes have it. The question is that clause 2 stand as printed. Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Minister, with the urgency of this motion, this amendment, can you please let us know when the commencement of the Administrator's assent and the declaration will occur?
Thank you, Opposition Leader. As is standard with all bills, I can't, give a specific time because obviously that is entirely a matter for the Administrator. But we're obviously highlighting to His Honour just how important this is, and so we're hopeful in a week or two it will be done.
Thank you, Mr Chair. So, Minister, it'll just be when the next Executive Council presents to His Honour, and at His Honour's discretion, if that is then agreed upon, then it'll be assented. Thank you.
Sorry, we looked at each other and agreed, yes.
It wasn't a yes, but she nodded yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So, any further questions on clause 2? No further questions? Okay. The question is that clause 2 stand as printed. Those of that opinion say aye, to the contrary no. Aye. I think the ayes have it. The question is that clause 3 stand as printed. Those of that opinion say aye, to the contrary no. Aye. I think the ayes have it. The question is that clause 4 stand as printed. Those of that opinion say aye, to the contrary no. No. Member for Gwadja.
Thank you. The Chief Minister, I just thank you for your closing remarks. I just wanted to confirm when you spoke about the Commissioner doing the appointment or the rank, just for my understanding, that's where the Commissioner or the Executive Officer would make the determination as to what, whether or not there would be a ranking, and then that would determine, Chief Minister, the kind of equipment that that officer would have. Is that, I want to be clear, I take on your point. I don't want people to be scared around thinking that every housing officer is going to have a gun or a transit officer. So is it the Commissioner, based on risk, that would determine the rank?
So perhaps I'll, rather than using your words, I'll answer your question differently. What the Police Public Safety Officer does is create that rank. So you can see in the legislation, for example, currently it says, an Aboriginal Community Police Officer or an auxiliary or a Police Public Safety Officer. So it lists it all out, a member of the police force, a special constable. What that then does is allow the Police Commissioner to create the powers behind the role, right? Of which all of those are different. So that's an already existing process that happens, and we're just adding another layer into it, I suppose you could say. So this will then allow the Police Commissioner to go to the NTPA and talk about the EBA component, which will obviously be paying conditions and those types of things, but also about the powers. And it's exactly the same process that happened when Labor created the PALIs, for example. There was discussion around, would they be carrying guns? Would they be able to arrest people? Would they be able to, have a taser or whatever other types of powers it might be? So that will then be determined, and through an instrument, which is an official documentation that the Police Commissioner does when people are recruited, then that bestows upon them the powers that are in that document. I'm not preempting that because obviously that work is to be done. I think it's fair to say that it will at a minimum be what PALIs have. So, we're looking at that as a baseline, I think it's probably fair to say, and then look upwards from there of what they need to have. We've been very clear that would include firearms. PALIs carry firearms, and a range of other, things that police need to have on them, because they are a stream of police. What will be probably the more limiting factor, rather than what they have, it's where they can use it. And that will be probably the greater distinction around what does a constable do and what does a PPSO do is where, and that's how it works in other jurisdictions as well.
Thank you, Chief Minister, for just clarifying. So it'll be up to where the determination might be as to where they're on patrol, whether or not they can, or whether they'll be required to have that. So thank you for that clarification. The only other question I have, and if you indulge me for a second, it might not be relevant, but can a housing or a transit safety officer under this new system who's not comfortable with potentially wearing a firearm decline? I'm not sure if that's a current process that's allowed or not, but I just wanting to make sure, because if someone doesn't feel comfortable having it, they don't have to. Is that correct?
No, so we shouldn't talk about them as transit or housing officers.
Sorry.
Because you know what I mean? They won't be anymore.
No, of course.
So, currently we have public servants fulfilling security type roles with various powers, and we just gave them some more the other day. When they sign up and become a PPSO, they will be sworn, they will have their oath of office, they will go through the training college, and they will come out the other end a PPSO, a police officer. And so with that will be all of the things that a police officer has. I'll just confirm, but I wouldn't think you could become a police officer and just not want to have some of the gear. Yep, you cannot. So if you want to be a police officer, you have to have police stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Chief Minister. I thought I'd just get some clarification on that. And then there's still the provision, and please, I'm sorry, I know I'm moving across a little bit here, but there's still the provision that those that don't want to transition over to now police, I can't, what is that? PPSO, sorry, they can still stay where they are, but for the purposes of everyone else, they then have to come under all of the conditions that a police officer would because they are now police.
Yeah, this is way off the bill, but will be my last indulgence, Member for Goja. But it is our preference that everyone transition across. We are respectful and mindful that that's not going to be for everyone. Equally, perhaps not everyone will be eligible. And so there is that consideration to be mindful of as well, and we are working with those people to make sure that there is either continued employment, in housing or transit, whatever it might be, or alternative employment. But certainly our absolute preference and what we're saying to people is come across. This is going to be fantastic. You're going to have great paying conditions. It's going to be a really strong workforce. You join an incredible police family, and you'll be able to do all of those things that you wish you could do, and you come to, successive governments have been back in and out of this parliament, giving them more powers and more tools and more this and more that, including yours, Member for Goja, and so we can put all of that to bed by bringing them into that police framework and family.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just want to say, Chief Minister, thank you for the indulgence. I just wanted to get that clarified, and you've answered all of my questions.
Thank you.
Member, Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Chief Minister, in regards to the PPSOs, is there a particular number that will be recruited to? Like, are you doing it via a tranche or stage process? And if so, what would the initial numbers be, just to allow the public and, of course, ourselves to understand what that would look like on the ground in the community?
Yeah, and a normal squad size is 24, and we've already had expressions of interest of people wanting to sign up. So obviously they're waiting for the detail too, which is just goes back to that urgency. And I think even to the member for Goja's point, we have people who are currently in roles, and those roles are going to change, and we're very mindful of the impact that that has on them and their families. So the sooner we can put this component to bed, it means the sooner we can go back to our current transit and housing officers and say to them, this is what it can look like for you, which then gives confidence and certainty to them and their families, which is important to all of us. So it is really important, and 24 is about the size of a squad that we can put through the college.
Thank you, Chief Minister. I appreciate your response. Through the chair, Chief Minister, the police public safety officers, will they be positions available across every region in the Northern Territory to serve in those roles?
Yep, so as we build up, obviously there's going to be a build at 24 a squad. We're really hoping by the end of the year we've got a significant complement, but that will just take time to build. It's a couple of year project really to get to that full capacity. We don't have limits on what that looks like. Obviously it's demand driven, but we are very, very keen to be making sure that we are filling those PALI positions that are gone because PALI's transferred to constables, so that our constables are not on bottle shops, and then also that we've got enough capacity, that we've got that really forward facing right across the territory of police on streets, in communities, at shopping centres, able to do that high-vis antisocial behaviour role, while our highly trained constables are able to do that crime investigation, answer the 000 calls, all of that kind of stuff.
Thank you, Chief Minister. And through the chair, will these positions also have, do you envision that they will have allocated locations to be designated to? For example, 3 in Katherine and 10 in Alice Springs, 4 in Nhulunbuy, that type of allocation?
Yes, they will be. So it'll be up the spine. So Darwin, Katherine, Tennant, Alice.
Thank you, Chief Minister. And would that extend throughout the squad progression when there's 24 and more and more and more? Would they then also be able to be located in remote communities?
Nothing's off the table, opposition leader. We've got to build it up, and obviously you've got to have a critical mass in each location to run the shifts properly. So it's sort of not a matter of saying, okay, we'll send 2 here, 2 there, 2, because obviously if one's sick, on leave, all of those other things, you need multiple people to be able to manage an entire shift or 24-hour period. So, years down the track, if we've built a capacity, then fantastic.
Thank you for the answer, and through the chair. Also thinking, of course, these positions will be public employment, public servants positions. Will these PPSOs also receive entitlements similar to the different rankings across the police force?
So that's what the next stage looks like. That all has to be explored, resolved, dealt with and offered.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Member for Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Chief Minister, in my briefing I was told, and it's been echoed in the chamber today, that this is a simple administrative change. It's not a decision about powers, training, use of guns, but I understand from what you're saying that when we vote for this today, we are actually voting that PPSOs will have the power to have guns. Is that correct?
No.
The Commissioner will have the discretion to decide that, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so when we're voting today, we are voting that the Commissioner, that decision will not come back before the House. The Commissioner, it'll now be outside the chamber in terms of arming the PPSOs, is that right?
What this legislation does is create the rank, and I've said it many, many times. I don't know how to say it any clearer for you, Member for Johnson. And whether this sat on the table for 1 day, 100 days or 100 years, the equipment that the PPSOs will be carrying would never come to the chamber. So it is completely irrelevant to the bill. That, as is for all of our different police, and again, I went through it, whether you're a member of the police force, a special constable, an Aboriginal community police officer, a police auxiliary or a police public safety officer, that is a separate process, entirely operational and a matter for the police.
Thank you. I understand that, Chief Minister. My question, to be clear, and for people who've contacted me with concerns, is that when we vote on this bill today, I understand that we are voting to create a new rank, and that will then be managed within the police force through the usual processes. And what that means is that those decisions will be made within the police force. So I think you've already answered this, but I just want to be very clear. When we vote for this today, we are saying that the decisions about PPSOs having guns can now go ahead without any other input from outside the police force.
Well, no, that isn't correct. And I appreciate your desperate efforts to try and stitch me up and set me up for a gotcha moment. You can put it in your newsletter, Member for Johnson. I couldn't care less. But I don't really know how to explain it any clearer than I already have. If you're trying to get something out of me, it's not going to happen. I just don't know what else you want us to say, Member for Johnson. You can stand there sweetly, trying to say it as sweetly as you want. Your intent is not as pure as it sounds coming out of your mouth.
Chief Minister, I'm just trying to understand. I don't have any...
No, you're not. Rubbish.
Point of order, Member Barclay.
The Chief Minister has answered the question. This isn't relevant to the
Yeah. Okay. As I did say, we need to just state a clause, and Chief Minister has answered. Do you have any further questions, Member for Johnson?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, no further questions on clause 4? The question is that clause 4 stand as printed. Those of that opinion say aye, to the contrary no? Aye. I think the ayes have it. The question is that clause 5 stand as printed. Those of that opinion say aye, to the contrary no? Aye. No speakers on 5? Yes. Leave the opposition.
Thank you, through the chair. Chief Minister, in regards to clause 5, obviously it also carries on with the extension of the definitions. We understand that. And again, I think you answered it in the last clause, with the ranking system that is outlined in those different definitions, so an Aboriginal community police officer, a police auxiliary and a police public safety officer. Question from our team is, can those PPSOs transition into the other two, or perhaps the other two also into a PPSO? Like, what would they be able to change ranks? Is the simple question.
It's not, you can't just move between them freely. So there's different training for each of them. We have a very sophisticated college that runs multiple training programs, which are multiple lengths of time, cover off on different processes. So it is varied what we do at the police college. But there are pathways, and I think that's a really important part as well. And we've just graduated just a couple of months ago. I think it was 17 Aboriginal community police officers into constable, which was the largest squad we've had, and it was exceptional. It was really, really good. And this is part of the hard work that Leanne Little and her team are doing. And that's what we want to see. It's really lovely within the force to have pathways for people. Sometimes people don't make it into the constable squad straight away. It might be a fitness issue or some other things. And then very often we see them become auxiliaries or Aboriginal community police officers, or just get their foot in the door and learn their skills, learn their craft, and then they have another go. And I've been to many graduations for constable where people have been ACPOs or auxiliaries, etc. And even Pallies. I mean, Labor quite literally created the Pally role and then gave them all the opportunity to go on a constable course, and then they became constables. So if a police public safety officer decided, oh, I like this, I really want to be a constable, they could apply to become a constable. They would have to do additional training, and if they passed all of that, in theory, then they could become a constable.
Thank you. Through the chair. Chief Minister, just confirming with the change of the Amendment 4 Clause 5, with the Aboriginal liaison officers, which many people, very much admire and respect, yes. That would then, if someone was an ALO, they would have to take further training to then be eligible for one of these other three rankings that's under the PAA.
So the reason you don't see Aboriginal liaison officer on there is because they're not a sworn role. That does not make them not a critical part of our police force. They're an incredible part. And what we do a lot of work with the ALOs is to encourage them to become ACPOs and encourage them to go up that rank. So that remains exactly the same as just more pathways, I suppose.
Thank you. Through the chair. And because of these rankings and the extension of the ranking through what's being proposed for the amendment, and I understand, Chief Minister, you've mentioned this, that some more of the operational details will continue to be worked out. But my question, particularly thinking of my electorate of Arnhem, would be, with the PPSOs, would they then also be eligible for the same sort of entitlements like police housing and those police leave entitlements if they are now in the eligible ranking of the three positions that have been mentioned under Clause 5?
So all of the entitlements, all of the conditions, anything you can think of that would be part of their, remuneration package is all to be worked through.
Thank you.
Any further questions on Clause 5? The question is that Clause 5 stand as printed. Those that opinion say aye, to the contrary no. Aye. I think the ayes have it. The question is that Clause 6 stand as printed. Those that opinion say aye, to the contrary no. Aye. I think the ayes have it. The question is that Clause 7 stand as printed. Those that opinion say aye, to the contrary no. Aye. I think the ayes have it. Is it the wish of the Assembly that the remainder of the bill be taken together? There have been no objection. It is so ordered. The question is that the remainder of the bill stand as printed. Those that opinion say aye, to the contrary no. Aye. I think the ayes have it. The question is that the bill be agreed to. Those that opinion say aye, to the contrary no. Aye. I think the ayes have it.
Division.
Supported. How many supporting? Sorry.
How many supporters do I need?
Just one. Okay, division called. Okay, ring the bells.
The outcome of the division is 17 ayes and 6 noes. The ayes have it.